Hello, it's the Mover and Gonky show. I still have the Luna cam up. Coming
Hello,
to you
everybody.
live from our studios in Orlando, Florida.
Okay,
For a live studio audience.
that's right. Applause, everybody.
Laugh track. Let's go. What do we got today, Gonky? It is the beginning of the end.
It is. It's the last one.
This is the last one on my channel, and we've explained it before, but I figured one more time just because people are going to get confused. So Wednesday, May 1st, the Ready Room becomes
the Mover and Gonky show.
Mover and Gonky show. Gonky, right. You've got a new channel that you're starting.
I do. I'm. It's just, I guess, my own. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to call it. I may call it TK Heartsock, or I may call it Ready Room. I'm not sure yet.
Gonky.
Mover has his own opinions. Or Gonky.
You should call it TK Gonky. So we're going to do that. That's going to be interesting. And our first show will probably be a giant cluster because I'm going to be in a hotel. And we've got a stunt host, stand in, Casmo, who may or may not still be my friend after today.
Well, you gave him a real fighter debrief. Dude. Nobody's going to be your friend.
He's mad at, dude, if he's
friends
not
don't
mad
make
at me,
friends debrief more.
That's right.
If he's not mad at me, he should be. In fact, I went and trolled him on his Twitch stream today. He because I said, dude, you're simulating the best lieutenant ducking the debrief. Because yesterday, last night, this weekend actually. So this weekend we did some DCS stuff because he's like, hey, I taught you helicopter. Show me the Viper. I'm like, okay, sure. What I remember, been a minute. And so first time we went out, we just did like some formation because, dude, it is helicopter guys don't do tack line abreast and all the stuff that we kind of take for granted. So I kind of gave him the basics or whatever, kind of like what Bucky did when I flew the Hornet for the first time. I'm like, hey, I don't even know how to turn the radar on. And he's like, okay, he porpoises the nose, and I go out to tactical. He's like, dude, that's a rejoin signal. That's kind of.
Oh yeah, I know. Tomato. I get it, man.
Yeah, it's whatever. So we did that, and then last night we're like, hey, you want to do some more DCS? Cool. Let's push it up a little bit. So now I'm like, okay, we're gonna do the radar heat to guns exercise. Is that a Navy thing? Did y'all get do that? Where you go 90, Fox 3, Fox 2, and then just a guns track or whatever.
Kind of.
And then I'm like, okay, dude. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna do a 9K.
Yep.
Dude. I think when you don't have the background, good on Casmo, dude. I mean, he's a trooper for going through that stuff, because when you don't have that IFF and that basic, and you're trying to do this in a jet that you've never flown before, because he's like, yeah, you do great in the Apache. All I do is fly the thing when I do the Apache. I don't do systems. I don't try to shoot stuff. I'm like, I can't. But he's out there single seat doing this stuff. And I'm like, I can just imagine the helmet fire in his cockpit, because it's so different from what he's used to. And so we did the 9K set, and to his credit, he did well considering his understanding of what we were doing, because I'm trying to brief this in the air, right? And that's what I explained to him. I'm like, dude, if we were doing this, we would have had like yesterday. We'd have sat there for like 2 hours. I'd have gotten the chalk, the whiteboard. I got the markers, and we'd be drawing, and we'd get fundamentals, and you'd get all this, because I'm in the voice only trying to explain, okay, dude, rotational to translational. And he's like, what do these words mean? And I'm like,
yeah, dude, the cockpit's like the worst classroom.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, as I'm explaining, like, the jet is just kind of wandering across my nose, and I'm like, where are you going?
Yeah.
So I said, hey, you want to do a debrief? He's like, oh yeah, people love that. We'll do that. I said, I'm going to give you the real debrief. I started it with plans, products, and brief. And that's how you knew it was going downhill. And I was like, for the brief, there was none. And we probably could have used some level of briefing, but he was a trooper. He may or may not be my friend anymore after that. There were some F-bombs thrown.
No more invites for you on Low-Level Health podcast.
No, I don't. I'm uninvited. However, he will be here next week, I hope, still.
Yeah. Well, he likes me still. So, I mean, I'll need
Gonky. Yeah, I'm the one out there making friends and influencing people. But you can check out, I think he's posting the first video series of us doing the Viper tomorrow on his channel. So go check out his channel. He was a good sport about it. Standard stuff where what's mapped, what's my speed, and all that stuff. So
if he was in the Tomcat, he could have just said, what's my speed?
Exactly. He didn't have and he's been practicing. If he does fixed wing stuff, he's been practicing, I think, the Strike Eagle, which obviously has the self-loading baggage in the back to help him out. So he finally gets a taste of single seat life, which is fun.
It's pretty nice.
DCS nerdery that we did. I embraced my inner nerd and enjoyed doing it. And that's it, man. How was your weekend? Did you get drafted?
No, I didn't get drafted. Honestly, man, I don't really follow ball sports much. So until you mentioned it, while we were, how'd the match go? I didn't even realize it was going on. So I did the typical, me and my son burned some laps at the track, and then we did the family thing and kind of laid low a little bit, try to knock out some honeydew stuff around the house, and then get ready for Monday.
Oh, today's Monday.
Today. Yeah.
No, that is Monday. Yeah. Apparently we get listened to a little bit.
Yeah, we do. Which, by the way, hey, thank you for everybody who reaches out. I mean, Mover and I, we get lots of ideas about stuff to talk about, Mental Health Minute, and then the feedback is always good too. We got, I talked to a longtime buddy. I spoke to a buddy of mine that I hadn't spoken to in a long time earlier today, and he heard about the show through, I guess, one of the guys in his son's powerlifting club at school. So I thought that was pretty cool. If you watched my talk on Casmo about my first tour and how those guys are like brothers to me. I mean, we talked for like an hour, like we'd never, like nothing had ever changed. It's pretty wild. We ended up having to like cut it off, after an hour, because I had, my wife was like, hey, I had stuff to do around here.
Never. No. But it was always.
No, but it was good, man. It's cool. And, it was good feedback. And then Mover and I got to talk with a extremely smart person who listens to the podcast as well. So it must not be all terrible, because clearly most of you guys are clearly smarter than Mover and I. So
yeah, you have a much higher opinion of us than we deserve.
Yeah, 100%
for sure. We are.
But we appreciate it.
Yeah, experts on that. Well, that's awesome, man.
Doug,
do anything fun this week?
Oh man, just lay it low.
It's Monday. Monday is your highlight.
pretty much.
And Doug, welcome back again.
Yes, sir.
Good to have you. You feeling better?
Yeah, I've taken up VR golf. It's changed my life.
Okay. Wasn't expecting that one, but
No, neither was I.
Whatever floats your boat, man.
Yeah, after a couple rounds of DCS, you just switch over to golf real quick.
Get into the golf.
I was trying to find a hobby where I stand up and move.
That's true.
Well, yeah, in DCS, don't you throw your headset down and rage after you iRacing? It's iRacing where that happens.
Oh, man.
You get punted, lose all your safety rating, and you're like, out.
Yep.
And then you go back. It's the 5 reps.
Who's never owned a race car. It's faster than me.
Yeah. So, Gonky, I've been trying to, I don't know why I even think I can afford this, but I've been trying to look at insurance for Turbine Legend.
Oh, yeah.
You can't. You cannot. Dude, I'll tell you. No, you can't even do that. You can't get liability. So you'd have to self-insure the liability side of that too. Because there's one on controller. Actually, I think it's on all of them. Controller, trade a plane, or whatever. And dude, that's my dream aircraft. The Turbine Legend is. Doug, can you pull up a picture if you get a moment?
Will do.
It is a home-built aircraft. And, you know, when I first saw it back in the early 2000s, it's got a Walter M601 turbine, turboprop, 650 horsepower. It's tandem. It looks like a P-51, except, you know, instead of being 1.2 million, which obviously is way out of the price range, they're about, you know, 320,000 or so, which is still high. But for that much performance for a 300 knot airplane, that Luna would fit nicely in the back seat while we cruise around and relive the fighter pilot days, because you got to wear a helmet and a mask, so you really look cool. And they race them. But I, like, out of curiosity, because I'm like, you know, I could probably figure out a way to make this work. No one will insure it. No one. Not a single, like, I tried, there you go, except the one I was looking at was white. But isn't that a good looking airplane?
Yeah, it's awesome, man.
Dude, it's got beta. It can land anywhere. I mean, it's, you know, it's 6G. It's just 6Gs, which is great for the neck and the back and all that stuff. But it's a tough airplane to insure. And then on the other side of the aviation market, which I may do a video on this in the coming weeks. I went out last week or so ago to go hang out with Brandon and the folks at Harrison County, which I haven't done a video with them in forever. Great people at the helicopters in Gulfport. And sadly, the OH-6 that I flew, which is like one of the, you know, coolest helicopters I've ever flown. It looks like Magnum PI, right? It's the bubble helicopter, the Loach. It has been sitting for 2 years.
Why?
Because the fuel cells are bad. So it's got 2 fuel cells. It's got a right-hand high-pressure fuel cell, and they're self-sealing because of combat, right? The whole idea, you know, you take a round through it, you don't lose all your fuel. Well, those bladders, those little cells, they go bad just over time because they're not the hard cells like you'd get commercially. And the problem is nobody makes them. Nobody makes them, and nobody can find them. And so the right hand went bad, and that's the one that that's the high pressure side. And then the left hand, they have one, but it's been in a crate for 2 years. So they're like, dude, we're desperate. We don't know what we're going to do. So I reached out to, I started watching like Cletus McFarland videos and Heavy D Sparks, because Heavy D's got, which everybody's always asking me, like, you should be friends with these people. And I say, yes.
Would love to.
I would love to be friends with these people. I just don't know these. But so I straight up reached out to the company Thoroughbred Aviation in Kentucky, and they're trying to help figure out a way to either find the bladder or, you know, go through the conversion. So I've got actually a bunch of people on this. Like, I've reached out. In fact, that's why I'm talking about it tonight, because I'm going to shake every tree to get this helicopter flying again. It is my mission to get this OH-6 flying again, and not because the alternative is it's scrap. Dude, without fuel cells, it's just scrap. It just sits there. It's useless. And
yeah,
that makes me sad.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, what's
yeah,
it's costing them money. They keep it in a nice hangar. It's costing them money.
Yeah, it's not, well, their hangar agreement, you know, it's taking up space, but I don't know that it's really costing them anything, but they're losing the capability. They're losing a backup helicopter. They had 2 helicopters. They're losing some functionality with it. And dude, it's history now. An OH-6 is history, and that's been with them for like 30 years. We want this to be a helicopter that continues to fly. So if anybody knows where to find one of these things or can help us out, I would be very grateful. And
what year is it? What year is that helo?
Oh my God, it's probably, I don't know, 60s, 70s.
Wow, man. I mean, it's well kept. I've seen it.
Oh yeah, it's in good condition. So the OH-58 is also fairly old, but it's in great shape too. And they just upgraded their pod, and they were showing me, which I'm going to try to get some video of. They upgraded their pod and their spotlight, and the two like now look at the same, like wherever one looks, the other one, and it's got like 4 modes. It'll do like infrared mode, red mode, like it's got all these different modes on the spotlight, and then the actual display is like a touch screen that they can disconnect, and then anybody in the agency, as long as it's flying, can go to this website and watch the video. Like, dude, what kind of capability now has this thing created? It's really cool. So I'm trying to go out there this week right before, because I'm going to be out of town for a little while, and try to get some video and stuff on that. But anyway, that's all for the updates. We've got some chats already that people want to talk about. Douglas Rose says, Mover, follow up on your mailbag comment that the Israel strike on Iran ruined the entire plot of Top Gun Maverick. It did. The recent strike where they took out the SAM sites that were protecting the nuclear thing, it's like, here's your whole movie right here. They just did it.
Inspired by Maverick.
Yeah. No, they're like, hey, inspired by Mover Ruins Movies. Top Gun Maverick. Renee says, Mover, your tan looks good. So this is what happens when you get old. You can nap just about anywhere, and when you fall asleep outside.
Where did you fall asleep outside at?
Sitting outside, just sitting out my pool. I was
really?
Like, dude, it's been nice. It's been like 70 degrees. I'm like, oh yeah, this is nice out here. Next thing I know, I wake, like Luna's waking me up, and I'm like, oh boy, I've been out here a while, huh?
Oh, that's funny. Good thing she woke you up, man. You probably look like a lobster.
Luna is the hero. Hammy on Twitch says, looks like a Super Tucano and a Mustang had a baby. Dude, that's a good looking aeroplane. Patrick says, keep up the good work. Get Mace more often. Yeah.
Thanks,
well,
Patrick.
With someone awesome like Mace, like any of our awesome guests, very hard to get awesomeness to come back because they're busy.
She'll be back.
Awesome thing. Oh, she'll be back. Yeah, she'll be back. But still, it's very tough. Garrett says, Mover and Doug, where do you sim race? iRacing? Yes. Well, we used to. Doug, I don't think you've done it.
I haven't been in that thing since January.
I haven't either. It's such a commitment to go do a race, and you're just like, you know what? Just watch TV.
I got my safety rating perfect, and I'm never going to touch it again.
Angie says, sad, I'll have to watch this another time doing a Gonky and living in an RV this week. Potato internet not being cooperative. Angie, weren't you the one that was flying on the 7.3? So glad to hear you survived that.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago. Remember that?
Yeah.
Like
Feel your
going
pain,
to
Angie. That'll be me here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, that'll be me Thursday. Riding with the cattle. John says, a ready room, look to someone who restores them for the movies.
Your helicopter.
Helicopter. Yeah, the thing is, it's got to be yellow tagged. It's a Part 91 certificated helicopter, and they want to keep it that way for the rules surrounding that, and that makes it more complicated anytime you've got that. Dan O'Grady, thank you. Finally catching on live. Thanks for taking some time last week for my long voicemail. In fact, I think we've got another one from you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. Okay, speaking of airplanes, Gonky.
Yes, sir.
You can actually buy a Yak 52.
Yeah, this is not a very
controller.com.
Yeah,
I know where there are two.
It's
locally.
I had to look. I'm like, a Yak 52. What is that? And then
So I guess we're in. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Now we're in 100-year-old tactics. because they've taken a Yak-52. So this is the external video. We do have internal video as well. This is all from Twitter, from someone who living in Ukraine. But what is that a parachute, Gonky?
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. I mean,
does the drone pop up like, does it have like the ballistic chute like the BRS?
It must. I mean, I'm surprised it's like bright hunter orange. Here I am, right?
Yeah, that's weird.
I don't know if have they already shot it? Is that why the chute's out?
Oh yeah. Yeah, this thing's already, but look, he's got his flaps down. I mean, what better way with slow speed? I think you can hear it here.
No, dude, that's not coming from the airplane.
What is shooting?
I mean, it sounds like somebody's shooting on the street.
At the airplane, yeah. Well, here's the I mean, you can hear so this thing's already dead. Wow. And then, yeah, now they're saying we need Super Tucano. I don't think there's any more videos.
Yeah.
Gonky, what do you think about that, man?
I think it's smarter to use a Yak-52 than like an F-22 and like 2 9Xs. Yeah, I kind of like you're saying. I mean, I think it's great, actually. I mean, it worked, right? They got it. I mean, what do you think, man? I mean, it's not like the Yak-52 is 5th gen with all the Gucci stuff, but at the end of the day,
I mean, cost per hour, you and I can afford it. So yeah, it was a Russian drone, the Orlan 10, over Odessa, is what the Ukrainian media has reported. And according to some sources, they have not been retrofitted with wing or fuselage mounted machine guns due to extensive and technically challenging modifications required to integrate such weaponry into the airframe. So they're basically saying some dude with a rifle.
Right. It wasn't the pilot that was shooting, right?
No, it's the backseater. It's the guy in the back. Yeah. Which is straight out of, World War II, World War I. Really cool. I mean, it's a 2-seat, single engine, all metal monoplane with a low wing configuration. Obviously this would be ideally suited because you can go slow. I mean,
yeah,
you need to do.
Well, I mean, these drones are, I mean, we kind of had a lengthy conversation today about drones, but these things are, these things are kind of a new, changing the landscape of aerial warfare. And, the idea of using really expensive weapons against them doesn't always make sense when really it just takes some sort of blunt force trauma to take them out. Right. I mean, I think using the Yak is a good idea. I wouldn't be surprised if like that's their going in game plan now. It's like, hey, listen, if we pick these things out, with at whatever range, we're just going to launch these little, the Yak or an airplane like a Yak with a machine gun, right? It's like you said, it's World War II style, but I think it's effective, man. I mean, how hard would it be to shoot down a drone cruising at 50 knots and an F-16 that's 20 feet long?
Oh, dude. I mean, that would be, so that's one of the things we've talked about before, the drone threat in general. And every time we see one of these scenarios, we learn something, because it's almost like it's a giant operational test field, because, it's the first place we've seen widely proliferated drone usage for like FPV drones and drones dropping grenades into tanks, and using it for precision kills, using it for other things. And so you have this where now we have counter drone. Now we're starting to talk, how do we do counter drone? And one of the things we've realized in talking to very smart people is a drone may not have some of the limitations other aircraft have. Like you can jam GPS. Well, it may have its own internal system where it's reading terrain, and it's smart enough. It's got an INS, or inertial navigation system. Like it doesn't necessarily need GPS, so you can't jam that. You can't jam the signal because it may not need a signal because it's autonomous. As AI gets better. I've talked about before, I've got a Skydio drone that visually recognizes things. It recognizes obstacles, and it doesn't need any input from me. It just does. And it'll follow a route. It'll do all this stuff. So then how do you kill it? Well, we see here where sometimes, you just go to the simplest thing, and they put a Yak 52 out there with a guy with a rifle, and they said, go get it. Now, is that the best solution? Maybe. I mean, it works here. My issue is always going to be find F2T2, right? Find, fix, target, track. Finding and tracking these little drones is hard to do. It's hard to distinguish that. So it's a huge threat that, as we see this stuff in the battlefield continue, I think we'll see more and more creative ways to address it. And I like this, but what I'm curious, I'd love to see the entire engagement, because we're only really seeing the end. I would like to see the entire engagement. Number one, how long did it take them to do it, right? How long from the time that they said, hey, we've got a drone, we need you to shoot it down. Okay, find the drone, get the canopy back, start popping off rounds. Like, how many rounds did it take them to do this, right? How long was that cycle from the time we see the video from the alert scramble? And now can we scale that? Because the biggest thing with drones is airspace saturation. That's a very scary, real possibility. And it's hard to track them, man. I mean, you can't find the source, then what are you going to do?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, what if there would have been, a dozen of those drones? I mean, what are they going to do? Launch? I mean, you're going to have like barrels out both sides of the Yak, just
well, well, I mean, yeah, you could. I mean, so right. let's extrapolate this. You got a Seawoods, and mounted on the back of something, and it's just spinning around R2D2 style to take them out.
Yeah, with this particular engagement, one thing that's pretty eye-opening to me is an airplane like the Yak can really anchor with this thing, right? I mean, if you're in a fast jet, it's missed it. And you might maybe lose sight of it. You got to turn the corner, come back, get regains, right? So I mean, like you said, hey, he's got the flaps down. So I mean, he can just once he finds it, he can just anchor until it's done, which is something you can't say about fast jet.
And that's a great point too, in that I had a comment the other day on the video we talked about drones, and they're like, oh, when we did the Israeli thing, and they said, oh, hard to do, 100, I think he was using metric, so he's probably European, 100-kilometer drone, so hard to kill. And it's like, I think people have this misconception, because he actually responded. He said, yeah, well, I thought because it's slow, it would be easier. And it's like, dude, 180 out. The slower targets are, when you're in a fast jet, are typically more difficult. And then that brings up the argument, the Army kind of runs this in some ways. What about an Apache?
Helicopter.
What doctrinally an Apache, or, we've had Daniel, when Daniel was on here, he was not talking about the Apache. He was talking about customs. Remember when he was on here talking about the intercept they did, where the F-16 said, no, we're not going to go kinetic, and the customs guys rolled up next to him? Well, that then becomes the smarter answer, right? Because a guy in the back of a Black Hawk with a Scar 17 or a minigun, a door-mounted minigun, now they can take it out, because that Black Hawk could go. It can do 140, 50 knots, or it can do 50 knots. It doesn't need to anchor like that. Yeah.
And in that case, there would have been a lot less collateral damage, right? I mean, it's just, interceptors are built to intercept other airplanes, really, or cruise missiles. It's, when you're talking about these drones, it's a whole nother,
there.
Yeah. A whole nother ball of wax.
Yeah. Yeah. Daniel, you did. And that was exactly what we're talking about, if it makes it past all the other steps, what are you going to do? And it's like,
right.
Right.
Yeah. At the end of the day, a guy with a rifle might be it, but the scary thing, man, is, this drone stuff we're still at the very beginning of this, as these things get smarter. I mean, can we can the counter be developed and implemented fast enough? Do we have, in the US, like, how are we going to protect ourselves? Like, this is happening overseas, obviously, but we talked, about drones.
Drone swarms. Yeah, we
drone
talked about drone swarms at Langley and other places,
right,
where it was like, who did it and
yeah.
what happens?
Do you just, do you give every, T-Bear with an air tractor a pistol and say, have at it, or
he says he would be yes. Yeah. T-Bear would be like, absolutely. Well,
yeah. Well, yeah. I would be right there with him. But realistically, how do we defend this, and who defends it? Like,
whose job
is it, right? I mean, is it, the Navy, when you're deployed, it's a little easier, right? It's the Navy, because there's nobody out there in the sea space. But like, when you're talking about here domestically, who does that? And it's kind of a gray area, man. It's not pretty if you really start thinking about the possibilities.
Well, we've talked about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like when we were talking about the Houthi drones, what was killing them the most? It was the ships, right? The ships were the ones.
Well, that's because they were attacking.
Right. But my point is, what I'm surprised, because we've seen the helicopters attack the Houthi boats, right? We've seen those in action. I am surprised we have not seen, the Seahawks,
attacking the drones,
right? Because they're relatively similar speeds and doing that, and it's not the, you don't need the Hornet to go and VID and all that stuff. So
I think the reason there, man, is, we used to train to the cruise missile threat, which was low level, whatnot. And I think the reason why, like, your Hornets are the ones that are getting the drone kills out there is because, day one, when this first kicked off, it's like, well, you guys practice this stuff, right?
Right.
Not exactly. Like, we practiced against real cruise missile threats. That wasn't me, dude. I don't know what just happened.
I don't know why that keeps happening, but it's just okay.
But like,
I didn't do it.
But the the helicopter squadron on the boat, their primary mission was search and rescue and replenishment at sea, right? So they weren't, they really didn't have any training or time to train for. I'm not saying they can't do it. It's just like, given day one, like, holy cow, these things are coming. You launch the Hornets, arm the Sea Whiz, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that, I think that it's our responsibility to keep bringing light to this, because, and by our, I mean everybody. It's everybody's responsibility to recognize this threat for what it is and continue to go, hey, we need answers for it, because we don't want to have another thing where the attack happens and we go, well, nobody ever thought of that.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a threat.
Yeah, you can have you can have the most awesome weapons available, but if you're able to, disrupt one of the chain of events that's required to launch that airplane, like take out the maintenance, take out the pilot, take out the runway, whatever, you've essentially neutralized that threat. So, being open to attack without any kind of defense is a scary spot to be in.
Yeah. All right. We got some chats from the audience probably related to this, because I think it's a hot topic, dude. I think this is one of those topics that we're going to probably talk about every time. D-Stu says, how many F-16s in a squadron? How many F-18s in a squadron? Where are your troops? And may I go there and count them? Saw a most awesome video of 20 plus F-16s flying together. What a breathtaking sight. C1 V-SIC, 'tis the season. Looks like Eielson. It depends. Navy squadrons are smaller than Air Force squadrons. I think typically in the teens. However, you'll have these bigger composite squadrons where it's total force integration, active duty, Air Force, and reserves. That'll be like these 20 plus jets and stuff like that. But it just depends, and how many are even flyable. That's another question all unto itself.
Yeah, like Mover said, 12 to 14 in Navy squadron. Although the Hornet RAG, or the FRS, the training squadron, we had over 100 airplanes on the books, which was a lot, which is more than any Air Force FTU unit, right, Mover?
Well, yeah, because the Air Force has like 6 squadrons at a base that are all FTU. So it's not
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
it's not like 106 where it's like
I
one
got
big, so little different the way the Air Force does this. Does it count as an air-to-air kill? Like, would you tell people at parties?
I probably would. I mean, but I probably wouldn't, okay, if I was sitting there like talking to Duke Cunningham and he's telling me about his MiG
No.
kills, I'm not bringing up my drone kills.
Well, like, okay, let's say you're Hangman. Hangman never said whether it was a drone kill or a real kill.
Well, his last one was a real kill.
His last one was a real kill, but that's because they loaded him up with everything the ship had. He had no choice but to kill something. If he didn't go kill something, they're just like, you know what? Either kill something or don't come back.
That Hangman's jet was capable of a G.5. That's it in that loadout.
A G.5 with the entire war. He was like this. If Maverick failed, he was in charge of the entire war. Brian says, Mover, have the agency check with other agencies that have received OH6s from the 1033 program. I don't think there are many OH6s being received from the 1033 program. I think we're so far past that at this point that that it's just like they're now MD500s, which has a totally different fuel cell. Like, because I know, like, the fact that I'm asking, they have already exhausted everything that they've possibly done, and now they're just like, dude, we will do, we'll try anything as long as we can afford it. So I think they already have. Obviously, I'll ask, but pretty sure that this is we're at the last ditch Hail Mary. We just need something to get this thing flying again. Bio has a 01 says, love the show. Cheers from E6 land. E6 land. Holy crap. Okay. Yeah, I know. I was like E6. I was thinking like the E6 Mafia or something, like the E5 Mafia, like the enlisted land. But no, this is like, dude, what are we getting ourselves into? We have too many people watching. Any interactions from the Takamo community before? Hopefully they're not too off-putting. Haha.
No, I got 2 good friends that were Takamo pilots. One of them lives here kind of locally with me. I ride dirt bikes with him. He's great. Great friend of mine. And then my other buddy, he flew Takamos for a while and he's off to bigger and better things now. And the world needs weirdos. I'm just kidding. They're good dudes. Good dudes. There I go bullying again.
Why are you bullying the Takamo community? You had it. You were there. You were right there. I was like, Gonky, I'm proud of you. You're saying all these nice things about them, and the next thing you know, the world needs weirdos. And I was like, dude.
Well, it's like you always say, Mover, the world needs ditch diggers. I mean, I agree with that.
The world does need ditch diggers now more than ever.
See where I get it.
No, dude, you bully me. You're older.
Yeah, the crazy thing, I didn't even know I had no idea what the E6 Takamo was until I was like getting ready to select, and they're like, hey, what do you think about E6s? I'm like, EA6s? And they're like, E6s, like the big 4-engine jet. I'm like, we don't have those. That's how clueless
Is that the Doomsday jet?
It's a communications jet, dude. They fly, they throw like 10-mile wire out the back of it.
Oh, I saw that. So they can talk to the subs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter the other day. I was like, interesting.
Yeah.
Science.
Very science.
Jeff says, did talk about the hard 747 landing at LAX. Whoa.
I saw that.
So I saw that. We didn't make it a topic because I was like, it's some poor guy's like training ride.
Jeff, it's because we've been there.
Yeah. Imagine, I guess when you start flying the bigger aircraft, you got all these spotters that watch every landing. But imagine, Gonky, all your worst landings end up on YouTube, and like VATSIM covers. We love VATSIM because they do awesome coverage, but then they have to cover the ATC communication of you going, say reason for go around. It was a hard landing.
Well, yeah, and a lot of people don't realize it, but in the airline world, there are no dedicated training flights. Like my first time ever flying a real airliner was with people in like a revenue flight. So, it's kind of wild that airlines do training on revenue flights. And having
Yeah,
been an
I don't-
instructor, I mean, you can only save it so many times. So,
But from what I understand, 7.4 is a pretty easy gal to land. So
that's what I've heard.
I don't know. I don't know. But we're not gonna. We got too many other topics we got to talk about. Corvette World Rob. Speaking of Corvettes, I found an allocation for a Z06 today.
Oh, don't do it.
Why not?
Wait for the ZR1.
No, you do the Z06 until the 01 because you know I'm not going to be first for a 01. It's going to take 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
Anyway, sounds like the situation the F-16 guys had in Defense Play, a 1988 movie, You Need to Ruin Mover. Okay.
Thanks.
I haven't seen that one. Have you seen that one?
Oh, man. See,
Renee says, if a missile can seek a plane, can a drone seek another drone? Yes. In fact, they were dogfighting. There was a whole video of the two drones dogfighting over there. I don't know what happened. I guess they just run into each other.
Well, I mean, Mover, I mean, you talked about it, like the drone that you have for like making movies, like you just tell it, follow me, and it'll follow you. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy. The drone stuff is, man, it's like Pandora's box. We just can't put.
Well, it's like you said, it's like a Terminator.
Yeah.
Like a little Terminator that's like, I have one mission and it's to kill, and we're just going to go do that.
Yeah.
You can't turn it off. That's the part that scares me, is like there's no undo button.
No, once you launch it, it can be autonomous, completely independent.
Yeah. All right, Gonky. Marine fighter pilot honors his great uncle.
Yeah. This one's pretty cool. So you got Captain Howard here. He's a Marine Harrier pilot, and his great uncle he just passed away April 1st. He's the last survivor of he was on the Arizona when it was sunk by the Japanese at the beginning of World War II. And he did an honor flight for his great uncle by flying with the wings that his great uncle gave to him. And I think it was 2020 when he got wings. So he took that and he flew with an American flag that they're going to put on his casket. And the cool thing is his uncle was part of back then it was like the enlisted aviation program. So his uncle went on to be a naval aviator. He flew Catalinas throughout the war, and he was actually part of the first cadre of officers and pilots who kind of developed a lot of the I guess what ended up being SEER. So kind of a nice gesture here. The Marines, they launched 2 Harriers up for this flight and did something special for his uncle. And his uncle was what's his name? It's worth saying, man. Cotner. He was a lieutenant commander Cotner. He enlisted in the Navy in 1939. So he lived to be 102 years old. And like, I saw this story, man, and I have a huge admiration for that entire generation. One of my favorite channels is Memoirs of World War II. They put on a really nice, like once a month, usually they put out a video, and it's, they find a vet and he tells this story. And it reminded me, so this particular story, it reminded me of a flyover that me and my buddy did for it was Admiral Arnold, Jackson D. Arnold. And he died in 2007, and he was at Pearl Harbor. And I got to meet his family. And back then, some of his buddies were still alive. So I got to hang out with real World War II vets. And like this guy's great uncle and Admiral Arnold. I mean, just the things that they did. So like Admiral Arnold, he was at Pearl Harbor. He shot down a Japanese torpedo plane with a Browning assault rifle. So he got one kill with a Browning assault rifle. He got 2 other kills flying a TBM. And then at 10 o'clock at night, he got promoted to CAG, and they wanted him to lead the mission next day in the Hellcat. He'd never flown the Hellcat. So he took a flashlight and the pocket checklist, went downstairs, got in a Hellcat, familiarized himself with the cockpit. His first takeoff in Hellcat was at night. He shot down 2 Japanese and attacked the beach and came back and landed on that was his first flight ever in the Hellcat. So you look at this generation, man, and it's just like, I mean,
my God.
yeah, you can't. I mean, the magnitude of the things that they had to do, were on the spot promotions, go get in that plane, fly it, like pretty wild stuff. And like, it's sad that literally every day, we're losing the people who participated in that. Not too long from now, all the World War II vets will be gone, which is crazy to me. Because growing up as a kid, that's kind of that's all the videos I watch for, P-51 Cam and whatnot. But it's just this is a really nice gesture by the Marines. And again, it's just I just kind of wanted to pay my own tributes in respect to that generation. But I don't know, Mover, what do you think? Did you have any exposure with World War II vets at air shows or anything, talking to them?
So I did an interview with a World War II vet that was a doctor, because I did a history. It was like an oral history or whatever. It's actually in the LSUE archives, Doug, with Dr. Savoy, actually. Doug, if you know who I'm talking about.
I do.
He's still around. No, he passed away.
I'm thinking of Joe Savoy. Never mind.
Yeah, no, this was the elder. And dude, you're 100% correct. Like, I'm sure bean counters hear your story about doing the checklist and going out, and they're like, whoa, where's the 8-week,
Yeah,
just to start the thing. Yeah, right. We need 6 months. My concern, I hope we don't ever lose the history, because I think the longer time goes on, it kind of dulls it a little bit, and we don't realize the gravity of what these brave men and women. I mean, there were women that were doing some awesome things as well during World War II, but the gravity of what they did and what they accomplished, because they were fighting evil. They were fighting evil on 2 fronts. There's no denying it. You can't, rewrite the history or anything, but there was pure evil, and they stepped up and against pretty big odds made it happen. And not only did they make it happen, but they created a world that could prosper, right? Because the world had been at war and destroyed, and they turned around and made it something great, something that they were trying to make it to where their kids would never have to go through this again. And I think the farther away we get from it, the more we forget, and the more we put ourselves in the exact same situation again. And the more we risk having something like that happen again.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, I when my kids get old enough, like, I fully plan on exposing them to, the history of it. And, just, the crazy thing is we're talking about early 20-year-old guys and gals making it happen. Like the men went to war and the women had to pick up the slack at home, right? And that's building the bombers, flying, and women flew them, off the assembly line. So like, it was and even if you weren't in, right, even if like you had you didn't physically qualify, well, there was rationing, right? I mean, it's not like the 20 years of blowing holes in the sand. You still go to Walmart, buy whatever you want, right? That wasn't the case. I mean, it was.
I mean, watch It's a Wonderful Life, man. Look at Jimmy Stewart's character. He didn't go to the war, but look at all the stuff that he was doing back home. And
no, Stewart did go to the war. He was a bomber pilot.
No, I mean his character.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
In the show, he had an ear thing, so he didn't go.
That's right.
His brother got the Medal of Honor.
That's right.
Got the Medal of Honor, Navy Cross, one of them. Anyway, that's a good thing, dude. I almost forgot about this. Actually, I did forget about this, but I wish I had not, because you made me think of it. I wanted to honor a fine American who passed away recently. I interviewed him on the channel with the F5 groups that were part of the movie Top Gun, but his life was way more than just Top Gun. Peter, his call sign was Horse Caulk. And Oregon called me last week and told me about this. And he's in, is his best friend, and he's kind of like pretty torn up about it. And hearing this, you're like, this is the good. The good don't stay. I mean, we can't. The longer time goes, the stuff happens, but it's unfortunate. So I just wanted to, his obituary. He was born October 18th, 1955. He passed away on the 25th, leaving behind a legacy of kindness and achievement. He graduated from the Naval Academy. He was an outstanding graduate in operations research. He spent 30 years in the sky, civilian and military, including 18 years in the Tomcat as an F-14 instructor pilot. He went to Navy's elite fighter weapons school, Top Gun, and was the top-ranked department head while heading the Tactics Development and Evaluation Department. While at Top Gun, he was also a MiG pilot in the movie. He flew the F-5. I think they all flew the F-5 and the A-4, if I remember right. So he took his energy to medical profession later in his career, starting with the 9Gs and Life Wings, then continuing his work as consulting, helping to bring the debrief mentality to solve problems in medicine. He decreased medical accidents by 600% at one hospital. So he took his experience as a fighter pilot and used it to do good stuff outside. And I had the pleasure of talking with him as part of the Top Gun group. We got them all together. I'm so thankful that Oregon helped me set that up, because just like the World War II veterans, this is another generation that, the stories and the legacy, it's preserving that, so we don't forget about these fighter pilots that were, he was leading the charge. I mean, look at Top Gun, Top Gun in the 80s. I mean, dude, it doesn't get any better than that. Just all the stuff. And they transitioned Top Gun, starting more missile related stuff. They were trying to get out of that Vietnam mindset so they could start fighting the next threat. And it's just nickel on the grass, man. It's just tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think, even, I mean, my dad was in Vietnam and he's 80, right? So, I mean, it's just crazy. Korean War vets, it's, yeah, man. That's why I've always said it'd be so cool if every vet had their own channel, even if they just told, their one story. That stuff, like those stories, that's what keeps history alive. And that's what allows the next generation not to forget, in my opinion. Because as a kid, I idolized those guys, not the warmonger part of it, just the things that they did,
Well, the resilience and the fortitude. And so that's the other part. I'm not advertising my channel or anything, but that will, because we're now shifting to one channel, I'll be able to start going back and doing interviews again on my channel. So that'll be the silver lining in that, where I'll be able to sit down with people and actually have a no kidding conversation. Because I think the best interviews, like you talked about with these folks, is just shutting up, asking the question and then going, you got it, because if you get them talking, dude, I mean, I have been so honored to sit and be able to listen to some of these pilots talk about their careers and their lives, and not just their careers, but then what they did after. You take a lifetime of service, and then you've got a whole career after that, and they're still doing cool stuff. I mean, like what Horst was doing with the medical profession. I mean, dude just never stopped, so just very tough. Okay, we got a couple chats. John says, Gonky, love watching memoirs of World War II. My dad was in B Company, 334th Regiment, 84th Division, and their stories giving me a small glimpse of what my dad experienced. Absolutely.
Yeah, John, 100%. It's great. It's a fantastic. The production's fantastic.
Bob says, greatest generation. I'm fascinated by the Mercury 7. Learned recently they took 17 Gs in a centrifuge. Yikes. Yeah, dude, the right stuff. You watch that and you're just like, holy crap. Yeah. And then Plexi says, I randomly met a World War II P-51 pilot several years ago. He was sitting by himself in a coffee shop. I noticed his flight jacket and struck up an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
See, Gonky, that's why everybody tries to strike up a conversation with you in public. Like, give me your war stories. Reality.
Yeah. There I was, alone and afraid.
Where were you? All right, Gonky. So you got 20 grand lying around?
20 grand?
Yeah, $20,000.
I'm sure I could scrape something up. Why? What are we looking? What are we looking for?
Well, apparently the United States beat us to this, but they bought 81. So listen, I give you 15. Whoever the government guy is in charge of this, I give you 15. Depreciation, obviously, it's not worth 20 anymore. You sat in it. You probably, I mean, who knows what you did?
Can you insure it? That's the main question.
Dude, at 15 grand, I don't care. I'll just ride that thing in.
just punch out, go get another one.
I mean,
true, valid.
Whatever, man. It's a lot cheaper. But anyway, so I will refrain from my Borat jokes here. Yeah. But the U.S. has purchased 81 Soviet-era combat aircraft from Kazakhstan. A report from the Kyiv
Very nice.
says, I like Kazakhstan, a historic ally of Russia, is engaging more with Western nations. The planes could be used for spare parts or as decoys in conflict regions. They have acquired 81 obsolete aircraft. That includes, whoa. They upgraded their fleet and they auctioned off 117. So there's more out there, including MiG-31s, MiG-27s, MiG-29s, MiG-28s. Sorry, I added that in. Su-24 bombers from the 70s and 80s. Hold on now. You guys are poo-pooing 70s and 80s like that's a bad thing. Best Viper I ever flew was an 86. So, I mean, I would take them, any of them. The motive behind the U.S. purchase remained undisclosed, but the aircraft could be used in Ukraine, which is what everybody always go to, right? It could be used in Ukraine. Gonky, say this word. Kazpets export.
Yeah, that's about right. Probably Doug's the smarter one on
Kazakhstan's state-owned weapons importer and exporter. We need to find their number. They said in a statement that foreign companies were not allowed to bid, so the Mover and Gonky show cannot bid on this, apparently. Pentagon did not immediately respond to a request for comment from Business Insider. Didn't you talk to Business Insider? Dude, you've got a connection.
I think they talked to me. I didn't really reach out and talk to them.
Oh, you were the subject. Got it.
Yeah, I got a phone call.
Yeah, MiG-31. They want to talk about that, what it is. Blinken shaking hand with Kazakhstan. We don't really have any more information on this. So, Gonky, I guess first question is, how do we buy 2 of them? 40 grand. I think we can swing it.
I think we can swing it too.
Rip might not go to college, but
well, I'm sure we get the airplanes. Engines are probably like timed out. Seats probably timed out.
These are later problems. GoFundMe exists for a reason.
That's true. Yeah.
You can start, dude, you could probably start bullying people and charging them for it. I bet there's a market for that. Like on OnlyFans.
How about this? I mean, there's a spot in the air show circuit for a MiG-23. Too early?
Oh, dude. Ooh, I think that's called whistling past the graveyard, dude. I wouldn't.
Oh, sorry, man. It's just you teed it up, man. You yeah.
Well, did he buy a couple of them? Didn't he import? Wasn't that the whole story behind that? Was he did this? He bought them dirt cheap. He got a couple of them.
Some of these, yeah, maybe. Man. I mean, it's awesome. If I was,
I picked a MiG-29, dude. 2 MiG-29s, 3 MiG-29s. Hangar space might be at a premium, but I don't know.
I would. Yeah. You know what? I think I've always wanted to fly the MiG-31.
Okay. Practically speaking, where are we going to go fly these things?
To space in a MiG-31, dude. That thing is fast. It's super fast.
There's nothing I trust more than Russian pressurization.
I didn't say I wouldn't be wearing their spacesuit.
I love the idea of my blood boiling. If you gotta go, then you definitely don't need the insurance. But all right, I guess we got to get serious and talk about this topic because people are going to be mad at us. It's a great deal. They probably bought it for a mixture of what they talked about, maybe to give parts and stuff to Ukraine, but maybe also adversary air, I mean, something.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if things have changed, but I think that's the one biggest area that at least the Navy, maybe the Air Force does it better, had was the fact that you never really you never merge with anything other than another Hornet. And the problem is there is a little bit of, I mean, there's some eyeball cow. There's things that you pick up from fighting different jets. And you know, my time in Malaysia fighting MiG-29s and Su-30s, you start to pick up on things. And this is just in training, right? So,
Right.
you know, these are valuable cues, visual cues that any fighter pilot can use to hopefully not just survive, but to beat your opponent. And you know, in the 80s, they definitely had a program, right? They had a bunch of Russian jets. I can't remember the name of the book, but
I'm afraid to say it. I know what it is. I'm just always afraid to say it. So
there's there's a great book out there about that entire program. There's like MiG-23s and MiG-17s and 19s, I think. But you know, and they talk about it in there. Yeah, just merging with a real adversary aircraft is it'll set you back a little bit. And then actually fight them too, their strengths and weaknesses. Because you know, you fight Hornet versus Hornet all the time. Well, it's it's almost like shadow boxing sometimes, right? Same thing if I'm sure if you fight Viper versus Viper, if both both pilots are about the same skill level, it's you end
up at the floor staring at each other, going, "Who's gonna call knock it off?"
Yeah, exactly. Whoever has the least amount of gas, just call the knock it off now, right? Save me the neck pain. So I hope, even though they're older, that's not, it's not really the lethality is not the point. It's the, I think there's a lot of just eyeball cow, a lot of just things you can pick up by operating with adversary aircraft. And that's my pitch. I think there's a lot of value there. And I know the Navy did a poor job of doing any of that while I was in.
Yeah. And there was there was a push not too long ago, and that push seems to have died, where they were Draken and contractors were getting all these contracts, and, they were going to start importing jets, and they were going to do this. And then you kind of, you didn't really hear about it anymore. I agree with you that it's important to the article's point, though, because everything kind of pivots to Ukraine, especially since the article was released by the Kyiv Post or whatever the Kyiv news article. I don't see this as, well, I think two ways. Yes, it could be useful in Ukraine in that fleet replenishment, so that, if they could cannibalize these aircraft and, get whatever parts to keep their existing jets going. They can use more aircraft. Yes, that's always going to be a factor. But as they start getting other types like F-16s, which who knows when that's going to happen, and the Gripen, if they get the Gripen, but it doesn't fix their problem. It just kind of keeps them going, which at this point, that's a good thing. They want to keep going. I don't see it as this is, we did this so that they could, enhance their battlefield capability. I mean, maybe for parts and stuff, but I think, it's more of there's something else that, they see a value in doing this, maybe to trade. I mean, now you get these for one country and you go, hey, we got these parts for another. Let's work a deal. Cause they're always working, the 3 or 4 way deals with all these countries. So.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure we'll find out exactly what the fate is of the 81 Russian jets, but I personally hope they're flying as adversary air, but like you said, I don't think that's probably
no. More than likely it's parts and, jets for it's something else. Dragons and Marine says getting close to DCS prices. I see why you threw that up there, Doug. Kate says, thank you, Mover, for helping to keep the memory of those heroes eternal. We won't see warriors of their caliber again. Present company, I think you will. I think you will. Okay. Everybody says, get off my lawn, these kids these days. But dude, every generation's going to have their heroes, and every generation will have weak people. Like it's going to have it. Now the balance may shift, but you're going to have some of everything.
Well, even in the 20-year conflict we just had, I mean, there's countless stories of heroism.
Yeah.
Right. Folds of honor honors a lot of those people. I mean, there's Kate, I understand. I understand what you're saying because sometimes I tell myself that as well, but then I always go back to no, there really are. It's that spirit is still there, and there are still men and women in the military that have what it takes. You know, it's just World War II was like we mentioned, was a global full scale push, and
Yeah.
I think everybody had to participate. The last war that we were in, it was very localized, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then not just now, it's law enforcement. I mean, today in Charlotte, 7 cops shot, 3 unfortunately were killed. One
Yeah.
U.S. Marshal on the Marshals Task Force. They were doing a high risk warrant, so we thoughts with them. And then yesterday, or was yesterday Sunday, here in New Orleans, Kenner Police Department, they had 3 cops get shot.
Oh, wow.
A guy had already shot. I think he shot like 6 people total.
Mm.
And a sniper had to take the dude out, and they, the thing. So it's not just war, there's a lot going on. And I think you will always have your strong people that step up and answer the call. And then you will have those that don't. And, you're going to have everywhere in between. But thank you, Kate. DG says, mover, try FFC fuel cells. Look up in Tennessee. I'll write that down. A screenshot is what I'll do.
We're going flying.
I'm just trying to help here. And then Matt says $20,000 should sell my Kia and buy one. You should sell your Kia anyway. It would make a heck of a yard decoration at the very least.
Yeah, Matt, there's actually, Matt, in Holt, Florida, down the road here from where I live, there is a MiG-23 in a guy's front yard. You can look it up on Google Images. It's pretty wild.
Cletus McFarland will definitely buy one. Probably a couple. I just watched his video of him he has a carbon cub. Like those things are like $400,000. He got floats for it. And he's like, I'm going fishing, and he's got, I'm like, dude, like Gonky, how come our channel doesn't make this?
Cub's too slow.
That's valid.
That's why.
Yeah. You could do a helicopter. Gonky, you wanted, okay.
That's it.
Look at that.
That's it. Yep. I've driven past him many times.
Speaking of pictures, why do you think this is the coolest F-30? This is your caption. Coolest F-35 picture ever captured on film. Gonky, send it.
Yeah. So actually, this isn't so this is the Marines test. There it is. That's it. So what is this? Is it a King? Yeah, King Stallion, the CH-53K, which is the Marines' brand new heavy lift helicopter. They're testing it, and they're doing a heavy lift test here while refueling. So this is the joke, right? Because we like to bag on Fat Amy, but the coolest Fat Amy picture ever is of it being carried by a 53 being refueled by a KC-130. Mover, what do you think of this picture?
The only thing that would make it cool is if you had like the F-35 in
cooler.
Well, yeah, sorry, cooler. If you had like just idle thrust, so you just saw a little bit of an exhaust plume, because it would make the hippies so mad for how much fuel is being spent in this one picture.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, legal reasons. This is a joke. I love the environment. But yeah, I mean, it is cool. And dude, sling loading is not easy. I mean, that's by itself is a tough task.
Yeah.
I would love to see their ORM sheet on this. And it's like, okay, so because if you sling load and the thing becomes a danger to the helicopter, you have to jettison it. So who's
oops.
Right. So like, okay, let's say the refueling doesn't go well, which by the way, you see the other drogue out there, they should have figured out a way to get the probe out for Fat Amy too.
Well, okay. Full disclosure, Fat Amy, it's a dieted down version, right? So no engine, they removed like some of the stuff to make it lighter. But I guess the real story here, when I first saw this picture, I thought it was about the F-35, and it's actually about the King Stallion. I don't know a lot about helicopters, but I've always been a fan of the 53. I went one of the first air shows I went to as a ensign. There was a 53 there, and that thing is 100 feet long. It's a massive machine, and I guess the King Stallion is all new. It's like a foot wider than the CH-53E, and I guess it can lift like 36,000 pounds. It's insanely powerful. So I mean,
I mean, look how much pitch he's pulling. I mean, they're coning like the blades are. I mean, that thing is. So the C-130 is going as slow as it can.
Flaps out.
This thing has got, he's firewalled here.
But he's hauling Fat Amy.
Fat Amy. And it's on a short, it's so, I mean, dude, that's.
Yeah, it's
the rotor wash, I mean, must be incredible.
Yeah,
I read generating.
And Mover, I read that the F-35 and the King Stallion are the two most expensive weapons in the Marines. So the King Stallion is $97 million a piece.
Well, Garrett says it's 143.
Okay, well, I'm sure different options, give or take. You know,
I mean, the leather seats, obviously. That's the one with the leather seats. It's the 3LZ. The 07 model.
Yeah, that's right.
Dude, I mean, I'd be cool to fly it.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I've got nothing but awe.
So when I first started flying the Hornet, I had several people tell me in the Navy that from the ground to 10,000 feet, CH-53 can beat the Hornet, which I mean, obviously it's an extremely powerful helicopter. I never contested that, but any 53 guys out there that want to,
yeah, you don't want to make fun of the helicopter guys. They already have a hard enough life.
Yeah, I think the 53 is cool. I think it's the coolest helicopter.
Oh, I'm the one bullying now. Okay, I see. Yeah.
Well, I think I said that at the beginning, man. I mean,
bad cop here.
I wouldn't want to fly it. I'd rather fly a pointy nose. But I mean, as far as helicopter goes, the 53 is it is in Transformers, right? It's opening scene, turned into a robot and blew up all the C-17s.
The Osprey is in Transformers.
Also. No, dude, the very first one is a 53, man.
Well, the Transformer is a 53, but the Osprey is in Transformers.
Well, yeah, dude. But
I'm just saying, Transformers is not the gauge by which we measure coolness, because
I'm just saying, man, it's a cool helicopter.
All right. Well, that's a cool picture, and good on them. Who took the picture? What was the aircraft that took the picture? Do we know?
This is all test stuff. So they were ferrying it from
well, no, I don't want to know the girl's name. I want to know what she was in. What was she flying?
Probably give you the information I had.
That's right.
Yeah,
you're so demanding.
I try.
Hey, it was actual an AI drone following, just taking pictures.
It was a Chinese drone. They sent it to us from DJI.
Very nice picture.
Posted it to TikTok, and now we have it. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Honorable Gonky, sir.
Yeah.
Good pictures. All right. Enough of that. Good talk. Good talk, Russ. Good talk. We have comments from the audience. Matt says 20. Oh, no, we're still banging on the Kia here. Poor Kia. Kate says, I stand corrected. In general, first responders are also heroes without parallel as well. It hurts to hear about the 4 officers. Yeah, I wasn't correcting. It made me think of, I mean, there is a lot going on in the world. Even our second responders can be heroes too. Bob says, 53s are awesome. My squadron flew D's and E's, range, speed, lift, future drone killer. That's a good point too, because the thing's fast.
Yeah.
I thought they quit building. Like, I thought that they said, you know what, this thing's dead. We're going towards the Osprey. So that's interesting that now the Osprey, we've come full circle. Now we're back to regular conventional heavy lift helicopters.
So the Osprey can't, in my layman knowledge, I don't think the Osprey is a heavy lift vertical takeoff thingy.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I'm surprised they're still developing this with, they're like, oh, we're going to move towards
I got you.
This. Yeah. I mean, it can do sling loading and stuff.
Yeah, the 53, man, it's in a class of its own. It's probably at least twice the size of an Osprey.
Yeah. All right, Gonky, let's talk about Taiwan and China tensions, because honestly, I think this is related to what we were talking about earlier, with the drone stuff. I mean, in a world where these tensions ramp up and, China's got the one China policy, you can't, who was the professional wrestler guy, which, by the way, people are going to say Eurasian Times, don't talk about it, but we're about the topic, not necessarily the details.
Right.
Who wrote it doesn't matter so much. But the Republic of China Air Force, the ROCAF, or Taiwan Air Force commander, is talking about the incapability of its military to prevent a PLAAF, People's Liberation Army Air Force attack, has raised alarm bells. So it was a retired deputy commander, Chang Yenting, came after a Chinese military aircraft was spotted just 76 kilometers from Keelung City in the city's northern tip, which reports said would need to be 5 minutes to reach the presidential office building. So that's pretty close. He said after this that the National Defense Ministry of National Defense posted a chart on April 21st showing a Chinese military aircraft at 76 kilometers. And there it is. That's where it all happened. He said that the location meant that the military would not have had time to react if it suddenly headed for Taipei City. It would have been a decapitation strike. The National Army may not have had warning time. But the defense minister rejected these fears. He said that it discounted the theory. Observation of the aircraft served precisely to prevent such a scenario. 3 to 5 minute journey would only be allowed during peacetime. So they're basically saying, we didn't do anything because we're not at war. And he's saying, well, dude, you let them do it. And then obviously there's been an increase of air defense identification zones. On April 21st, there was 21 planes entered China's northern and southwestern ADIZ, which Taiwanese military monitored and responded accordingly. Naval force of 7 planned vessels also part of it. So it's ramping up. And the reason I wanted to bring this up, Gonky, is we've talked about the drone threat, specifically around our bases, especially with China buying up specific parts. And global politics being what they are, it kind of changes where, we say we're backing Taiwan, we're not backing Taiwan, or we're not outwardly backing Taiwan. We don't believe Taiwan's a sovereign country. China is very specific. They're like, it's a one China policy. Taiwan is part of it. And in, I think, the latest estimates, they've said like 2026, they plan to do some level of military action of invasion. And one of the concerns that I've talked about with the drones and with us is it kind of leaves us vulnerable, especially, if they're successful, because, this is where chip manufacturing happens. There's a lot of technology that we derive from. Look at all the delays we had just because of COVID, because we couldn't get chips for cars and other stuff. What do you think the threat is here from a global perspective? Do you agree that, hey, this is kind of, we should probably take this seriously, or do you think this is just another day in the Pacific?
No, man, 100%. Right. If Taiwan becomes China, that's a huge blow to your electronics as far as supply chain goes. And, everybody, if you're talking about drone technology being used and developed, if you don't have a capacity to make that stuff in your own country, say like the States, that's a major disadvantage. And you can't just stand up an industry like that overnight, right? The fact that, Taiwan, China taking Taiwan really, I think, puts probably the rest of the world at risk as far as being able to source parts to build more complex weapons. Which is bad.
I think beyond that, not just, if you back up, not just China taking Taiwan, but the overt act is a hot war, because inevitably the entire region descends into an open conflict. And I think that's something that nobody wants, because it is not, if you start having to defend the Taiwan Strait, that's a very bad scenario for everybody involved. And now we are toe to toe with China. It's not the Russia-Ukraine scenario where we're kind of proxy war, we're kind of feeding them stuff. That is, everybody gets involved. I mean, I say that, historically everybody gets involved, but it could be. I mean, we could sit back and watch. I doubt it. I think if that were to happen, it would be a shooting war, and I don't think it would go well for anybody involved.
No, I mean, as a Hornet guy, I did these kind of exercises, and it's not pretty. I mean,
yeah,
the problem there is you're in their backyard.
Yeah.
I mean, if China tried to come over and take, I don't know,
San Francisco.
Yeah, San Francisco. Or Navy North Island, some island, right?
Yeah.
Which was literally 10 minutes off the coast by jet. It's going to be a tall order because now you're in our backyard. So it's like you said, man, it's not good. And it, in addition to, fighting so far from home, basically, I mean, for sure, the supply chain will be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not, I don't think it's something that anybody wants to see, but it's definitely a threat because if you go into, I mean, there are already overt acts as it is with hacking, and, they're talking about hacking infrastructure here in America and their ability to retaliate that way. But now add in the drone threat, now add in the various other ways, infrastructure, economically, then it's not just a war in Taiwan. Now Americans, just like World War II, which you were talking about earlier when you're talking about the memorial, Americans are feeling the effects because, not since Pearl Harbor have we really had an adversary that could directly attack our bases and attack us. And now, I mean, what's to stop it? I mean, it doesn't, you don't need a bomber fleet to come bomb a base. You just need a small group with the right tools and equipment.
Yeah, and as a guy that buys and sells land, you can be a Chinese business person and come here to the United States and legally buy land. I mean, so if you start thinking about like, well, where are they going to launch these attacks from? I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities out there.
I would hope, like you always say, diplomacy prevails. And, it's not something, these little onesie twosies, fine, but I don't want to see a shooting conflict. I don't want to see an outright invasion of Taiwan happen because of the implications of what's next. Because they're not just going to go, okay, thank you. And I think there will be a broader conflict if that happens.
Yeah, I agree. It is a complex problem when you factor in the economics of it all, right? I mean, China's the producer, we're the consumer. You kill us, kill them. Maybe I hope, like you said, diplomacy prevails, and can we all just get along? Let's make money instead of war, right? So
just take a break for a minute. And,
right.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. We've got some more from the kids at home. Actually, not the kids. Bob again. Bob says this is why the CHIPS bill was passed. We're investing billions in chip manufacturing here. Rightly so. Remove the threat by removing the reason. But how fast will that happen?
Yeah, exactly.
I can pass all the bills. That doesn't mean
it takes time.
It's going to happen quick. Yeah. Brian says, my dad sent me a pic of the slung F-35 and a second helicopter near Atlantic City. Also, don't let the F-35 off the leash. It will run away for days. Oh, fat.
That's awesome, Brian.
Yeah. Beefy gal.
He must not like Fat Amy either.
Speaking of Fat Amy, Gonky, tell us about the Marines and their production issues, because I know you love talking about this because you like to bully the F-35.
Actually, I don't. It pains me anytime I see our forces struggling with stuff. But you know why, Mover? Because we have been on the receiving end of that. And like nothing is worse than being in a flying squadron where you cannot fly. And in this case, it may be because of the airplanes are being produced at a quality standard that is not acceptable. So this is an article that I actually just got like right before the show. The Mover sent me the VMFA 311.
Sent me.
Yeah,
Go
because he
on.
knows I'll talk about Fat Amy, right?
Yeah.
The Tomcats, right? Or the Tomcatters or whatever.
Tomcats.
Tomcats, that's right.
Where do you see Tomcats?
No, that's the name of
Oh, gotcha. Sorry.
that's their
Continue.
yeah.
Mm,
What is it? Is
mascot.
it Tomcats or Tom? Yeah, their squadron mascot, whatever. Anyways, yeah, previously they flew Harriers, they were deactivated Tomcats, and they were redesignated as an F-35C unit in 2023, and they were safe for flight. But their commander, Lieutenant Colonel Fisher, sent out a memo saying, "Hey, these airplanes that are being delivered to us, because they're brand new airplanes, are substandard. So they're finding all kinds of issues with the assembly, and basically it's required 700 hours of work to fix, and they've wasted 170,000 pounds of fuel fixing these things. So parts, tools, finding things in the fuel tanks, all kinds of stuff. So he's basically, I don't say whistleblower, but he's letting his command know, hey, you're giving me airplanes here I can't use. I can't train. We can't train maintenance. We can't train flying. You cannot be a safe and effective warfighting unit, which VMFA 311 is trying to be, when your primary weapon is substandard. Which to me is kind of crazy. They're like, well, maybe it's just a bad batch, but they've built 1,000 roughly F-35s. I don't know how many of the Marine version they've built off the top of my head, but with the spotlight on crappy quality has been on Boeing, right, recently.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of the first little look at, hey, guess what? Over here at the other U.S. aviation giant, Lockmart, they are also having major issues. Now, to plug Boeing, when I was a Hornet IP, we were getting brand new Super Hornets there at the RAG. And those airplanes were like a Swiss watch. I mean, they were perfect. You were going flying if you got assigned one of those jets. So I don't know, Mover. I like to say like these things kind of happen, but this is not just one airplane he's talking about. It's spread out. Now he's a squadron of airplanes, right? So I'm pretty sure the Marines have about the same number of jets per squadron as the Navy, because they're kind of like us. But I mean, what do you think, man? What's going on?
The first thing I thought of when they're talking about like tools being left in places and all that is the depot. Because when I used to do depot runs, that was always the big concern, and people would talk about that. They'd always warn you, like, don't trust a jet coming out of depot, because you would think, right? You'd think, oh, it's going to depot. It's going to be like you talked about, brand new, ready to fly. But the focus is not on all the minor parts. It's on whatever heavy maintenance that they just did. So that part will be great. But sometimes you have, rags left in places, and, tools and stuff wouldn't work. I mean, my INS failed, leaving the depot because, that's just some stuff that was working is now not, because it's been sitting. So that's what it made me think of. I was like, well, okay, I've seen this before. It's not unusual to have that kind of stuff. I have never flown a brand new jet like you, so I don't know, what it's like, because, the F-16s I flew were all old. They were old back when I flew them, and they're older now. So I am surprised by it, because typically, coming out of the factory, it is good. But the first thing I thought of was the 787 and the 737, specifically the 787, the whistleblower that they're talking about, jumping on the pieces to get them to line up and all that stuff. So it is interesting to me, and scary, because that jet has been plagued with so many problems production wise in general, right? If you've had trouble producing them, and then you get to a situation where they finally get there and they're still useless to you, I mean, that's a problem. I don't know, I don't know what the fix is, other than I think we've allowed these larger companies like Boeing and Lockheed, maybe they need more oversight. Maybe a lack of oversight is a problem. I don't know what Lockheed's is. I know Boeing, they have been the government has come in and said you are now going to have oversight because we were letting you do too much stuff by yourself. But I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Lockheed Martin and Boeing over the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years have transitioned more towards profit focused.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think that that's starting to really show. In 2011, when I did the St. Louis Air Show, I operated out of Lambert there where they build the Super Hornet. My jet broke. So I spent actually 2 weeks there. So every day I was hanging out with the men and women who were building brand new Super Hornets. And I watched a couple do their very first flight, and those jets came back. And I remember the guy, I cannot remember it. He's long retired now, but he's like, hey man, that jet, that's his very first flight off the assembly lines. How many squawks do you think it came back with? I was like, I don't know, 10. He's like, 0. And I thought, wow, that's pretty awesome. And he said they've got it down to a science, and they haven't built 1,000 Hornets.
Yeah, but I mean, I would think that because there is a lot of oversight, right? I mean, look at the acceptance jobs that have been posted. We've talked about, you and I have talked about them, the DCMA, acceptance gigs where there's a military pilot that accepts these aircraft. And without a doubt, even on the Boeing side, I think the workers, the men and women that actually turn wrenches on these aircraft, I think they have pride in what they do. Like, I don't think anybody's out there like, I don't care what happens. Like, I think there is pride and professionalism and a sense of, they want to see America win and they want these aircraft to be as good as possible. I don't know where the disconnect is that would allow something like this to happen. But what I do think would probably be wise is for the Marine Corps to do an investigation and get to the bottom of it and then report it to Congress and go, here you go. Here's the information. We need to figure this out and we need to hold people accountable.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of disagree a little bit. I mean, there was that undercover tape about the Boeing employees, asking, would you fly on this thing? And they're like, no, I wouldn't. And, when asked why, it was, hey, things have been going downhill here. So, and I understand what you're saying, Mover. Like, I 100% agree. Those people have pride in what they do. But when I say things have changed over the last maybe 10 or 15 years, or maybe even longer, what handcuffs are those engineers and workers working under? Like what?
Oh yeah.
What's the culture
for sure. Yeah. I'm saying the individual, Rosie the Riveter here.
Right.
Is not going out there going, well, I don't care what happens to them.
No.
And that's why I said it needs to be, because yes, you will have whistleblowers, but they do so at great risk to themselves, sometimes great risk to themselves, but
right.
And that is where it's the government accountability. Like they have to come in and go, we take this on as the customer and we want answers, and we will fix this because we are the customer and we want answers. You can't rely on the floor worker to fix institutional problem. If one exists,
right.
If what you're saying is correct, if it's an institutional problem, then it doesn't matter how much pride, how little pride, there's something else going on. And we already know that exists at Boeing, because of, the merger with McDonnell Douglas, all that stuff led to where they're at today. We know that, it's been, that horse is dead. Lockheed's surprising, and I hope that it is just a one-off, and what they have seen is something that they go, okay, yeah, we screwed up on this part. This is what was happening, mea culpa, let's fix it going forward. And it's not something institutional like you've seen with Boeing.
Yeah, I mean, especially given the fact that in the Marines case, they put all their eggs in the F-35 basket, right? So I mean, you want the airplane to be right when it comes out of the factory, because heaven forbid you lose one or two or kill somebody. And that's exactly right.
I mean, all of these, with the exception of Boeing and the MCAS stuff, we have been so lucky from a perspective of, we have discovered these things and drawn attention to them, and we're talking about them as we're mad at a company versus somebody died. Right. It's one thing to go, oh yeah, they suck, we need to fix this, versus somebody actually died because an F-35 crashed because there was a wrench, somewhere it should be. Have we lost aircraft potentially because things were not done right?
Yep.
Yes, but luckily it has not been fatal to my knowledge. I mean, I may be misremembering or not remembering a specific incident, or maybe it hasn't been attributed to that yet. But I do think when you have, one, okay, two, maybe it's a fluke, but if it becomes a trend item, then that's when higher headquarters needs to step in and go, okay, let's see what's the problem here. How do we fix this?
Yeah, they'll fix it. I mean, it's too high profile of a weapon to not.
And good on the commander for standing up for his people.
Yeah,
that's
100%.
what the leadership you need.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Douglas has sent me something. He's back. He was gone. Now he's back.
Who, Doug?
Yeah, he stepped away for a minute. So Gonky, do you remember? I know it's been a while. Flying your combat war Talon,
MiG-28. Yep.
Your MiG-28. Do you remember flying with an iPad?
2.
2 iPads.
2 iPads and a Garmin, whatever that thing was.
Well, eventually we stopped flying with the Garmin.
That's true.
So in Ukraine, again, it's a place of they're just making stuff work here. Business Insider came up with an article that says iPads are helping Ukraine's pilots flying Soviet-era planes in combat missions against Russian forces, said a U.S. defense official. Ukraine's pilots are using iPads for combat missions. They are using them for wild weasel missions. It's an example of adapting Ukrainian weapons built by stitching Western and Soviet parts together. Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, William LaPlante, told reporters of the D.C. conference last week, think about the aircraft that Ukrainians have, and not even the F-16s. We have a lot of Russian and Soviet-era aircraft. They're aging. He did not provide further details, but then there's a video of, and I'm not going to play the audio, but I want you to see that. Well, I am playing the audio. I don't want to play the audio. X, stop this right now. So this is from the battlefield. This dude is sitting up front, and if you told me, except for the HUD, it looks very similar to the hodgepodge cockpit that we had in the Mighty War Talon. And it just goes to show you kind of what they're making here. That looks like a little old school GPS.
Yeah.
And then you got your big old honking iPad.
Netflix.
And they're using it to shoot harms. And that's a GoPro Max, I think, as well. So there's your harm shooter. There you go. Those are pretty airplanes. The yellow, good helmets too. So they don't talk about how the integration happens in the article, but I mean, you can kind of extrapolate, right, for the systems itself. They've basically figured out a way, and we've had people talk to us about this too, where integration is tough with robust older systems. When they're older systems, they're getting the software to talk or whatever. But then if you can find a way to integrate, now it's easily programmable. Once you get something that can talk to the machinery, then it's easily programmable. And now you maybe don't need that upgrade that you thought you had, which is what they're doing. They're making do with technology, and I'm sure they're getting some assistance as well to make it work, to make the American harms work with these aircraft. But what do you think, man?
Yeah, I think, looking at this article and kind of what we experienced flying the War Talon, the whole, the normal military development procurement process is just like way too long for any real conflict, right? So, the idea of it kind of reminds me, man, honestly, of like experimental aviation vice certified aviation.
Exactly. Yeah.
In the experimental world, it's like, here's the problem. Here's the quickest, most efficient, currently best way to fix it without all the red tape and all the certification and all the cost and all the testing. And I'm not saying all the testing is bad, but I think in some instances it's probably overkill. So it's kind of, like I said, I see it as kind of like experimental style aviation in real world war fighting, which is I mean, it's thinking outside the box, which is cool. Which we did some of that in the War Talon, which was cool, you know, because we didn't have time.
Yeah, and so you make a good point about skipping the certification process, because we see this in the Guard Reserve. Because of how Guard Reserve money and GRIA money flows, it's easier to get in GRIA money than it is to get procurement money. And there's federal laws and stuff, you know, oh, well, how do we procure? We got contractors and all that stuff. For perfect examples, the F-16. The F-16 Block 40, 50 at active duty bases was limited to what the normal procurement process could give them as far as software updates and everything. For the F-16 Block 30, because it was exclusively a Guard Reserve program at the test center at Tucson, they could develop their own software. They could develop their own, upgrades, like when they went center display, when they chose the helmet, you know, the Scorpion helmet's different than the Jehemics. They were able to kind of step aside from the different normal processes to get to market faster, and sometimes have better capability than the normal one. Another perfect example, Giggy. Remember that F-15 show where the dude, he ended up being one of the test guys for the F-15, I think at Jacksonville. And they developed a way, because an F-15 doesn't usually run with a sniper pod, targeting pod. So what they did was they hodgepodged another display on there and certified it through the Guard Reserve Test Center. So faster, cheaper, didn't go through all the, you know, the wickets to get there. I mean, not perfect, you know, like if it came out like a Block 3 Super Hornet where it comes out designed this way, but accomplishes the mission. Same thing with us in the T-38, where we get the iPads, and next thing, dude, we're flying with ADS-B pucks. Yeah. So we're using ADS-B pucks as our data link. And, you know, I'm doing rejoins off of guys because I'm like, oh, I know where he is based off ADS-B.
Game changer.
It is. And it's just that little bit of capability that suddenly you were like, man, this thing will never work with XYZ software. And the next thing you know, you're like, holy crap, this thing is awesome. We've got this cool capability. And then the certificated, the ones that are stuck to these rules are like, hey, we want that. How do we get that? You know, that's a cool feature we got there. So I really think it's cool that they're doing that. And it's something that they've needed to do, because how else are you going to integrate? You have to figure out a way to work with what you have, especially with how long it's taken them to get the F-16. They have to work. I mean, the mission goes on. They still have to. And in some ways, it reminds me, you know, going full circle to the World War II stuff. This is their World War II. This Ukraine's World War II is happening right now. And those men and women are stepping up on the battlefield to make it happen with what they have.
Yeah. I mean, you know, politics aside, you know, who's it doesn't matter. The people actually doing the fighting, it's like they are the ones that it's life and death for them. And it is, and I think we're going to see more stuff like this, Mover, you know, as the conflict continues. I think we're going to see a lot more of this kind of stuff. And it's, you know, you do what you have to do with what you got. I mean, at the end of the day.
Yeah. And we don't even know what they have. Like we're basing this off of a 69-second YouTube video or X video, Twitter. We don't know what that iPad's doing. It could, I mean, it could have the poor man's data link, and, you know, it could be looking at sensors and locating SAM sites. There could be all kind of things it could be doing out there that we just don't know. But I do think it's a good thing, and it would be a lot cooler if they had integrated systems, but, you know, you make do with what you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just hope the battery doesn't die.
Or if it's too hot, they will shut off. Being too hot. I had both of mine shut off, and that was my pub kit. My pub's kit was turned off due to overtemp. So
Gonky, both of them, man. Come on.
They were, man. Both of them overtemp.
Yeah, well,
I like to keep my cockpit warm. It's nice. Real nice.
Yeah. Gonky, I think you're supposed to be talking about the Is it A10?
The surplus?
Mystery buyer for the A10.
Yeah, very interesting. I think the mystery buyer should be us, Mover. But again, if they're going for more than about 20 grand a piece, we're gonna have to get some serious bank financing. Pretty interesting story. It doesn't really name who the buyer would be, but the Air Force has been trying to get rid of the A-10 for some time. Luckily, the government has stepped in and slowed that process. But by about 2029, it's supposed to be gone. So there's a handful of countries that are in the mix, and you would think maybe Ukraine is one of them, but I guess the Ukraine has not expressed any interest in the A-10. Mainly, my guess is it's still a high threat environment over there. The Russians are using basically their A-10, right? The Su-24, and they've been taking some losses as well. So a little bit of a long drawn out article, but the countries are basically South Korea, Egypt, Vietnam, and Doug, did I miss one?
Poland,
Poland.
South Korea, Taiwan,
Yes.
Egypt, Taiwan.
Yes, Taiwan. Yeah, exactly. And Vietnam. And obviously for for obvious reasons, but I read through this article. Okay, those countries want the A-10, but Mover, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Air Force wants to get rid of the A-10 because it has become part of the reason is right.
They just put a new wing on it, and now everything's timing out. Yeah,
right. That's what I'm saying. So does it really make sense for any of these countries to buy a wore out airplane? I support building new A-10s, but does it make any sense? I mean, are these airplanes usable still? I mean,
yes. So some of that self-induced where they have taken like to prove the point, right? So they're like, oh, we want to get rid of these things, so let's start cannibalizing jets instead of getting new parts and going and acquiring new parts, because politically the Air Force has never wanted to keep the A-10. It shined in Afghanistan, Iraqi freedom, and it was useful. Desert Storm. But for the most part, the brass has never really, the fighter mafia has never really embraced it as we need this. It became that of folklore, so the American public did, and the GI on the ground did, and A-10 pilots, and those of us that, like the aircraft, we did. But leadership has historically, it's always kind of been that redheaded stepchild. So what I think is any country that can take it, they're going to keep it flying because they're just going to make it work. It's just like anything else. One man's trash is another man's treasure. We've got a B-52 that's still flying. Now, granted, the B-52 has been heavily modified, upgraded, maintained. But I think if you have the funds and you have the wherewithal maintenance-wise, because it's a rugged aircraft. It's not a delicate jet. So if you can get everything working now, it's become more delicate with the A-10C and all the electronics upgrades. So you do have a little bit more kind of non-steam driven stuff that needs to be maintained. But I do see it. Now, of those countries, the only one that stood out to me that would probably be a good candidate is South Korea.
Yeah, me too.
Tactically speaking, like just from a strategic standpoint of who could use that in any kind of conflict, their whole mission set, especially with the artillery and the FAC-A mission, and the reason there's A-10s in South Korea right now, they're really the only country that I'm like, yep, that makes sense. Because, you look at Poland, well, now you're talking the Russian IADs, the integrated air defense, all the SAMs. It's a high threat environment. We just finished talking about that with Ukraine. Taiwan, dude, I mean, they wouldn't even get airborne. So good luck. It's not gonna work over the water. It's not gonna work out well for them. I think if anybody makes sense that's an ally and a partner to get it, it would be South Korea.
Yep.
With that said, do I think they're going to let it go? No, I don't see us transferring A-10s to anybody. they'll go to the boneyard before they'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree. It's sad, but I mean,
Yeah.
once the A-10 goes, I mean, in my mind, that's a huge hole in our capability to support troops on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So a little bit of short breaking news. This is as of today. So
Ruh-roh.
ding dong, the witch is dead. Well, it depends on what side of the fence you're on. Gonky, where did you weigh in on this? Did you care?
Dude, you know what? I think by 67, like you shouldn't be worried. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to discriminate against age. If you want to work or like you had 8 wives and you know they all drive Ferraris, whatever. But like, dude, when you're 67, you shouldn't be. I don't think. I'm glad it failed. That's just me.
Yeah. So here's the breaking news or the news. U.S. lawmakers strike a deal because we've talked about this on the channel. This was a possibility in the FAA Reauthorization Act that the House had essentially said, okay, we can do. It might have even been 67 and 364 days. There were 2 different versions I saw. One was like 67, you must retire, and one was almost 68. And many unions had come out against it, although some of them had actually backtracked that and said, we don't really care one way or the other. But a lot of airline pilots were against it in general, because when they went from 60 to 65, a lot of people said that was part of the lost decade. They lost a whole bunch of seniority because of that, because, you know, when you start your airline career, you're basing it off of my drop dead date. Here's when I have to retire. Here's when I have to get out. And suddenly moving that goalpost, well, that stagnates seniority, that stagnates upgrade time, it stagnates a whole bunch of stuff. And people weren't very happy about that. Now, the counter argument to that was, well, you know, if you're still able to do the job at 67, it's age discrimination. If you make somebody retire prematurely, we shouldn't do that. And people were saying that, you know, it'll help the pilot shortage by letting them fly. I don't believe that would help the pilot shortage, because the people that are pushing 67, 65, 64, whatever, they're not flying at the regionals where the shortage is the greatest. They're not flying narrow body, which is or not typically. I mean, there are people obviously, but they're not flying the stuff that has the shortage. You know, wide body flying, there's really not much of a shortage there because it pays more and people want to go do that. So what the article says is they strike a deal to boost aviation safety, but they will not raise the retirement age. So this is in the Senate. So that in July, the House of Representatives voted 351 to 69, giggity, on a sweeping bill to reauthorize the Federal Aviation Administration that would raise the mandatory pilot age to 67. But Senate Commerce Committee voted in February to reject the retirement age increase. Also, ICAO currently makes you retire at 65. Now, there was also the argument that ICAO would follow whatever the U.S. does. So that was kind of a moot point anyway. Congress temporarily extended the authorization through May 10th as it works on a new $105 billion 5-year deal. The Senate is set to vote this week on more than 1,000-page. God, why are these bills so long?
Because there's
bill prohibits airlines from charging fees for families to sit together. Oh boy, that won't drive up costs. And require airlines to accept vouchers and credits for at least 5 years, but did not adopt many stricter consumer rules sought by the Biden administration. Requires 25-hour cockpit recording devices in an effort to boost safety. New urgency after a series of near miss. Isn't a near miss a hit? They said they would raise maximum civil penalties for consumer violations, $25,000 per violation to $75,000 to address the shortage of 3,000 air traffic controllers. You want to see somebody who needs a retirement age increase? Those guys.
Yeah.
Isn't like super low, like 55 or something. Like those guys.
High stress.
Yeah, but I mean, if they can manage the stress and they like the mental health minute, let them keep going.
There you go.
It also boosts a number of direct daily flights to Washington Reagan. I mean, dude, don't be so obvious when you're only voting for yourself. Speaking of mental health. She heard it. So there you go, Gonky. Ding dong, age 67 is dead for now, probably for the next 5 years, unless they do some kind of separate authorization bill. But as it is with this bill, you no longer have to worry about losing seniority.
Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah. No, man, it's
awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad it failed and hope it fails again.
Okay.
It's my opinion. Just my opinion. Don't hate me for it.
I hope it fails until I'm 65, and then I hope it succeeds.
No, yeah, you'd be sitting on a beach.
Yeah,
sitting on the beach, smoking a cigar.
Manchester me, Gonky. Manchester me.
Manchester.
I don't know what I mean. Manchester. All right. John says, Mover, have you contacted? Oh boy, words. Have you contacted Northwest Helicopters for the OH-6 fuel cells? No, they buy entire countries' helicopter fleets for refurb and resale. They fly a Loach and may know Avengers. Northwest Helicopters. Where are they located? Another one that we're going to screenshot and
don't turn off your. Yeah, careful there, pressing buttons, Mover, while we're live.
No, I know. I end up
self-inflicted.
Yeah. James says work finally calmed down enough to give the rare chance to put you guys on live. 2:30 a.m. here in the UK. Gonna rewind to start, but just want to say thanks for great shows.
Thanks,
I'm surprised people think that, but I'm very proud of us.
Yeah, the feedback I've been getting recently has been
makes
really
me wonder when that next shoe's going to drop. And some super negative feedback from very important people. Marble Falcon says try 110.
Okay,
what is a try? No, what is it? What is
Turkish?
What is that?
What is it?
Turkish. I answered the question before you asked it.
Of Turkey. My mysterious buyer guest list for the A10s is Poland,
Finland.
What's a GR?
I think it's some characters from another alphabet
Greek.
that Google can handle.
First is Poland, then the Greeks, then the Turkish.
Oh, there we go.
U.S. offered. This is like playing Trivial Pursuit or what is it, Trivia Night. U.S. offered thank you. This is why I always end up doing this. A10s to them before in the early 90s for free, though they refused because maintenance costs. Fourth, Illinois. Fifth, Saudi Arabia. Who's Illinois?
Israel.
God damn. See, it's a teamwork. Definitely not Japan. Or
Korea, or I can't tell the last one.
Kraut.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know. We tried. Thank you, though. Appreciate it.
We need words. If you're gonna make a comment, use your words. Don't give us all these little inscriptions.
Very Asian.
Is that Asian? He was Turkish, dude. You can't. Don't tell him Asian. He's Turkish.
I know, but
Speaking of Asian, talk about the Chinese J10 so we can wrap this show up.
China's J10, just a copy of America's F-16 fighter. Actually, there's an Israel connection. Yeah, I knew this. I knew this many years ago. So the J10 is a threat that Mover and I often replicated in the
allegedly
in the Mighty War Talon. And the article just talks about the J10, kind of what it is, and it's Gen 4 fighter that China developed by itself, started in the throughout the 90s. First flight was in like 97 or 98, and it's their own design, and it obviously has it's strikingly similar in some areas to the F-16. And China likes to say this is our design, but there is evidence out there that and I didn't know this until I read the article, but and I don't know, Mover, did you know anything about the Lavi being an F-16 guy? No, yeah. So if you look it up, the Lavi it's a Israeli it's a Israeli jet that looks strikingly like an F-16. And so the rumor is, and of course Israel denies it, is that it was cooperatively the Israelis helped them design the J10. The J10 was way more advanced than their previous. I mean, if you look at airplanes that China designed before this, they're pretty archaic looking. But the J10 has advanced radar. The first one had a mech radar. The newer ones have AESA. It's multi-role. It's kind of like an F-16 in the sense it's got about 30,000, 28,000 pound thrust, single engine.
Ah,
Obviously, that's the
no
Israeli.
kidding.
Yeah, pretty. I mean, I think it's a good looking jet, but I mean, obviously very
Yeah.
F-16y.
Yeah. Well, minus the lift
Right.
devices on the front here.
Yeah, it's got a canard on the front. So the J10 has a pretty advanced 4-channel fly-by-wire flight control system.
Mhm.
So it's a pretty advanced jet, and the rumor is the Israelis had a hand in its development, but is it a rumor?
Wow.
I don't know. What do you think? We were pretty cool. I mean, I think the J10 is
I'd
good.
never seen the Levy, but I would love to fly one. It looks pretty cool. I don't think it's an F-16 knockoff, other than it looks strikingly similar and almost identical, except for some cooler features.
Right.
It
Correct.
actually kind of reminds me more of the Typhoon.
Yeah.
I mean, don't you kind of see that resemblance there?
The front half is 100% F-16, and yeah, the
I
back
mean, yeah,
half.
that top is nose, but I mean, like, kind of like a single engine Eurofighter, like an early mock-up of what they thought the Eurofighter was going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Typhoon is a much better looking airplane. But
Valid. Yeah.
but yeah.
For sure.
But I mean I don't know. I know, having replicated the J10, it's formidable airplane, and the Chinese use it as in their aerial demonstration team, and yeah, I don't know. Will we ever find out if at least will we ever find out if the Israelis helped them design it? You can be the judge.
Yeah, I mean, the Israeli defense minister denied the report.
Of course he did. There it is.
But
So
in 1988, they had agreed. There was a report that they had agreed to develop. I mean, dude, that's like everything is a copy of something else. We've talked about their version of the F-22. What does it look like? It kind of looks like an F-35. Oh, it looks like an F-32, like F-22. I mean, a lot of plans have ended up in Chinese hands. So
I think the argument was, I think the reason why it raised a lot of eyebrows was the J10 was quite an advance from
oh yeah.
the previous stuff.
And I mean, the Israelis had F-16s because otherwise Iron Eagle wouldn't exist.
And that would have been devastating.
It would have been a tragedy of all tragedies. All right. Well, we got a voice message and then we got a mental health minute. I'm not gonna be able to help this voice message too much, but we'll see what we can do. There was another voice message that was it said comments on episode 43, but it was 52 seconds of silence. So I'm not going to play that. Just note that someone gave their thoughts on our episode 43 and it's 52 seconds of silence. I'm not sure if that's a moment of silence for our podcasting careers or if perhaps
he knew this was,
he was flabbergasted and did not want to comment. But Dan has refueling questions and I will let you answer.
Hey, Mover. Hey, Gonky. Viper Dan here. Thanks for last week reminiscing. That was pretty awesome. In lieu of the Marines CH-53K refueling with a Fat Amy hanging underneath it, can you guys speak to the differences between flying boom and probe and drogue refueling? Just some of the differences between the two as pilots connecting to those systems. Anyways, thanks again, guys. Cheers.
Gonky.
Well, I can only speak to the drogue and probe because that's all we did in the Navy. I never refueled. I never got plugged as an Air Force guy, so to speak. As a Navy guy, I always did the plugging. So that's the major difference in my mind, is how you do it. Tanking in general is really, I think Mover would agree with me. I think both styles, it's basically maybe a more advanced just formation exercise. Whether I think you're on a boom or you're on the basket, you're just trying to maintain position in order to get your gas. It's my understanding the boom operator has some control over the boom, and whereas in the Navy, you actually have to fly the probe or Navy Marines, any type of plug and basket type, you have to pilot has to fly the probe into the basket, which has its own challenges. But Mover, did you tank in the Hornet at all? Yeah.
No, we did not ever use tankers in Strike Patron 204 while I was there. I did refuel quite a bit in the Viper. And it's a formation. You're right. It's a formation keeping exercise. The ability for the boom to actually fly you around depends. KC-10, dude, if I'm going on a KC-10, life's good. They can fix a lot of your problems. And it was always nice when you saw a KC-10 because you're like, this is going to be a little bit easier. Because the whole point is, you got the probe and it's plugging behind you in the F-16. So, it's over your shoulder and all you're doing is maintaining a position, and you don't want to go within the boom limits because the boom is colored with like green and yellow and red, and you don't want to overextend it and you don't want to push up to where it's at the limits either way. Otherwise you'll get a breakaway, which means they want you to separate and they're going to floor it and they're going to get away from you and stuff like that. So your job is station keeping. You're trying to stay in this position in space while they're refueling. And it's one of those, it's just like anything else. The more you do it, the easier it gets. But even I've seen experienced dudes fall off the boom, get back on, fall off the boom, get back on. I don't know, with the drogue, it seems like you're a little bit more autonomous with that, with when you're doing, because it's the boom, your entire formation is watching you. So, it's not like, hey, I'm going to get one on each side and we're going to plug in, right? You could get the MIPPers pods and have one on each side. This is, okay, this dude's waiting in the observation position while you figure out, you're refueling, you get, sit back to pre-contact, you get back up, you sit back to pre-contact, you go back up, and it just adds to the stress because that guy's like, come on, dude, figure it out, let's go. Or they're actually on the radio telling you to figure it out and hurry up and stop screwing around. So that part kind of sucked. The KC-135 was kind of a pain in the ass because if it was heavy and it had the inboard motors turned up, so if it was a high thrust setting, it would bounce you around. And the more you bounce around, the more unstable you are, and the more you're pushing those limits that the boom operator doesn't like and will send you back to pre-contact. The KC-10 didn't have that problem because the engine's farther apart. It's not that big of a deal. But it seemed like all the time we'd always find the weather. We'd always be turning. There would always be something. And, if you're in, it depends on what kind of jet you're in. If you're in a clean Viper, you can do pretty much whatever you want because, it's easy. You got excess thrust. It's pretty, it's not bad. It's when you're in combat and you are loaded out with bombs and tanks and targeting pod and maybe a jammer or maybe a reconnaissance pod, something, that's when it becomes a problem because they can't go down to lower altitude because they don't the threat, right? They don't want to get themselves in those situations. So they're up higher, which means now you're tapping afterburner. And when the afterburner lights, it doesn't always light at the same time. So you're trying to stay on the boom and you're working in 3 dimensions. It's down, forward, up, aft, right? So you're always trying to stay within this little container that keeps you in position so that they can plug. And sometimes they're not on their game. Sometimes, you got a great boom operator and you're like, holy crap, this works. Sometimes they're not. And if you're both not on your game, dude, it's a rough time. The other thing too, I think it might be different for us is when they plug in, it actually connects to our intercom. About 50% of the time that actually works. You'll see videos on YouTube where they're talking to each other. There's an intercom. Once it plugs into the back, like there's an intercom system and you can have a conversation with them and, talk about whatever. Usually the volume was like, if you had the volume turned all the way up, you still could barely hear them, depending on what jet you're in. It was jet dependent. But I rarely had conversations, usually because I'm like, shut the fuck up. I'm like, but then you go back to like what Mace talked about, wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, don't get too stressed out because it's just like flying any kind of other formation. The more you tense up, the harder it's going to be. If you just relax, take some deep breaths, That's pretty good. But I don't know. Gonky, what else? What do I miss?
Yeah, it's fun listening to that because I some of that stuff I didn't realize, but no, with the probe and the drogue, the 135 was definitely the challenging beast. We called it the Iron Maiden, and it has the 9 feet of hose, whatever, and you had to plug into that hose, and you had to make a U with it, and then it would start pumping. So you didn't have a lot of slop, right, in your flying. And then of course the tanker's coming left. You're like, yeah, of course. The the things that made tanking in a Navy jet more difficult is, like you said, if you were loaded and the tanker was at higher altitudes, and that could just be because of the stack, right? The way everybody's stacked up as well, in addition to threats. But a beat up basket would give you a tough night, man. I remember one night I pulled up behind, I think it's a KC-10, which is usually like a Cadillac, but the KC-10, has a super long hose, and the basket was beat up. And I remember like the basket was like rotating clockwise while spinning counterclockwise.
Oh no.
At night. And I put the probe out, and the probe's got a light, and you pull up to this thing, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, I cannot look at this. I almost had to just in my peripheral do the plugging. The bow wave coming off the nose, and this is airplane dependent, but the Hornet's got the refueling probe up front, and you'd have it lined up perfect, man, and you would just come in to plug it, and the bow wave on a ship, it would just push the basket away. So when I was new, that was very frustrating. And I always used to chuckle when you roll up to a Air Force tanker, you tell them, port ops, nose cold switch is safe. They clear your pre-contact. You go back to pre-contact, and they're like, okay, yeah, you're clear contact, maximum closure 1 knot. I'm like, I just remember thinking like, they must think us naval aviators are that good, it's just like, get in there, right? But if you got too aggressive with it, and the reason why they said 1 knot, right, was if you hit the basket, especially on a KC-10. This won't happen on a 135 Iron Maiden, but on like a KC-10 or any MIPRPOD where there's a long hose, you'll send a sine wave through the hose. It goes up, hits the tanker, and comes back like amplified, and it'll snap your probe right off, so to speak.
Wow.
And you can't, like, it never happened to me. I had a couple times where I had I sent a little one, and it, the old probe did a shaky, and I was like, we're okay. But you can't, like, it happens so fast, you can't get out. But yeah, the Iron Maiden was the toughest. The KC-10, like you said, was real nice. The L-1011 was nice. I even tanked off a military version of a VC-10. It had like 4 engines in the back.
Oh wow.
Which was pretty cool. KC-130 would be cool if it could go faster. It's hard to tank at 220 knots.
We never did that. It was 135 or the KC-10. The other thing too, I don't know if they did that, but if they hand flew it.
Yeah, autopilot's broke.
If they're like, yeah, we're hand flying this when you're like, oh dear God, no, please don't do that.
For training.
Yeah. They're like, hey, we need to do this next one, autopilot off. I'm like,
so we
you couldn't do it with the 3,000 hour guy.
No, because it's more fun with the new guy. So we obviously didn't have, I imagine when you said there's an intercom, you mean like ICS? Like it would, so you didn't have to key the mic.
Hot mic if you had hot mic selected.
Yeah, so the only way we could talk to the tanker was through just regular radio comms. We didn't have any, but I remember as a new guy, my skipper playing a joke on me. He disguised his voice as a lady and began talking to me, and I'm like, this gal's quite friendly. She sounds a little weird, but I figured it out. He started asking me some pretty detailed questions about some boat drama stuff, and I was like, wait a minute. So yeah.
The other risk was when you had the lady boom, or any boom really, but dude, I was on a routine of pedal packs right before I would tank. So, because you always had to make sure you were zipped up.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
like-
And listen, some of the, I mean, some yeah, some of the boom operators on Air Force tankers would use their female
Mhm.
voice to their advantage, because it's a long time at sea, and a little bit of humor goes a long way. So it was always fun to hear them talk.
Yeah. All right, Gonky. For our mental health today, let's talk about knowing. I don't know. Is that a good segue? Know your self-worth.
Any segue is good, man, for mental
So
health.
we got last week we got something from the audience. This week we got something from the audience. This came from Matt on Twitter. He sent this to me. He said, I have a mental health minute topic for the show, and I think you will agree. Know your self-worth. I've struggled with it over the last year and a half, but I'm finally finding it again. We were always quick to find excuses as to why we were not happy with ourselves, but lately I found it again. A few nice comments here and there go a long way. Point being, nobody knows what others are going through, and a kind word or gesture can go a long way. Speaking of experience, I think this is a good lesson for everybody. Things aren't always the best, but night is always darkest before the dawn. There's always tomorrow. And then thanks for every week. So Gonky, we've kind of talked about this a little bit. Imposter syndrome. I think that's probably one of the places you see it a little bit more, where you really don't feel like you're worthy. You don't feel like you're good enough. I mean, and we're sitting here going, I can't believe people watch this show. So, we sometimes, just as humans, there's this balance between being humble and being like, just outright down on yourself. Knowing your self-worth is important, because if you don't, then you'll go along with things that might not be good for you. And I think part of the recruitment and retention problem is that people now more than ever are starting to realize their self-worth and realizing that they don't necessarily need what others have to offer. And you see that like with airlines, where contracts come out and they said, no, we're worth this. And people leave the military because they're like, look, dude, I'm worth this amount of money or this amount of quality of life, and you're not providing that for me. My family's more important. I'm going to go that way. And that by itself is mental health, because when you maintain a bad situation just for the sake of it and don't evaluate what you are worth, whether it's financially or just being appreciated, it's time to go find something else, because there's nothing worse than maintaining a toxic environment that is a detriment to your own mental health, because you just don't realize what you're worth. The other piece to this too is when you are evaluating yourself, knowing that you are a good person and knowing that you are better than what your critics are. Because sometimes we're our worst critic, but sometimes we also listen to critics that don't have a vested interest in our well-being. And we take that on board and believe them and start believing in the negativity, when the reality is we are worth so much more. And we stay in that situation when really we should get out and go, okay, that's not for us. So part of fixing that is having a strong group of friends and strong support network that can help you evaluate your self-worth. And when you start saying, hey, I'm not worthy, you go, yeah, you are. You actually are a good person. You've done good things. And somebody that kind of keeps you within the lines that, you keep bouncing off of, to remind you that, hey, you do have a high self-worth. I will always talk about, 988. If you need help, you feel like you want to take a permanent solution to a temporary problem, counseling, military one source, even 911, if you feel like, you're about to hurt yourself, because you are worth continuing and you are worth moving on. But Gonky, what do you think is, knowing your self-worth and how to make yourself feel worthy? I mean, continue to feel worthy.
Yeah, I mean, that can mean, self-worth can mean a lot of different things to different people. I mean, you covered it quite well, as usual. What I will add is, I believe we were, created in the image of God, and we're all flawed. And, I can tell you as a dad, I've recently realized that, I think as human beings, we're not born with a humble heart. My kid, like if I tell him, hey, you went through that corner, really fast, he'll say, I know. You know, and my next one was like, dude, have some humble pie. I'm like, I was complimenting you, I know is not really the reaction you would expect out of anybody but a kid, right? So I think as we grow older, the world kind of beats us up a little bit, which you kind of alluded to. And if you don't, if you let it, like Rocky says, right? If you let it, it'll beat you down, right? And knowing your self-worth can take a little bit of time, like when I first became a fighter pilot, I didn't really know where I stood, among my peers, right? So that can be kind of a weird time, but it doesn't take long. And, at the end of the day, you're a human being that is worth a lot to your friends and family around you. How many times have you seen somebody unfortunately take their own life, and there's just hundreds an outpouring of people who care, right? So I would say it's you have to have a little bit of confidence, and I'm not beating the Bible thing, but I think that if you're grounded spiritually, I would say that goes a long way to knowing your self-worth. For example, I can only speak for myself, and my wife she would tell you this too. I don't really care what other people think. Like, I know where I stand with me and God, and as long as I am in my own mind on the path that he has for me, and I'm striving for that and working towards that. So I guess if you're always working towards a goal, that helps you with knowing where you're standing, what your self-worth is. It's not as much of an issue. I'm not saying it's not, but that's probably what I would add, man, is if you're spiritually grounded, whatever that means, I think that can go a long way. Doug?
This is a good one. I want to pick up on something Mover said, although it's kind of a different angle, that if you have low self-worth, you can be exploited, but there are also people who will challenge your self-worth in order to exploit you. And having a very solid idea of where you're at and where you're coming from can be a good way to combat that. I'm in the business of being an expert on certain things. I literally get paid to do that every day. And sometimes I'm going to take a different tack on what you said too, Gonky. Sometimes for me, it's an objective reality. I know how I got here. I know things that other people don't know because that's my job. And it's also at the same time, though, it's very domain specific. Like I'm a race driving instructor because I've done it a lot, not because I have God-given talent. So, looking at certain domains and saying, hey, I really know this stuff can be a good anchor point for me, at least, to kind of get back on track with self-worth sometimes.
It's the old, you ever watch Parks and Rec, and Ron Swanson's going through the hardware store and he's like, hey, can I help you? He's like, I know more than you. And he just keeps walking by him.
Funny you should mention that. My wife and I were having a conversation along those lines earlier tonight.
Perfect.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite clips. I use that every now and then, I know more than you. Because I think about it every time somebody starts arguing with me in the YouTube comment section. It's like, I know more than you. Post your credentials or shut up. That's it. It's not a conversation. Yeah. But sometimes it is. Sometimes it is a dialogue, I think. But to the mental health side of things, you just have to know your boundaries and know that, you can have that dialogue with somebody. But at the end of the day, like Doug said, one person is an expert and one person isn't. So, and like you said, Gonky, you got to take that golden retriever energy and not care what anybody thinks about you. Just keep wagging your tail. It's all going to be fine.
Yeah. I don't know. You joke about that, right? But it is effective. It works. It works for me. That's just how I live, man.
I'm jealous. I wish I too could be a golden retriever.
We all can't have long blonde hair, man, or golden hair. Sorry.
I guess you'd be more like a black lab.
Yeah, dude.
Certainly the same neighborhood.
You're a designer dog, Gonky. You're definitely a designer dog.
I'm a purse dog.
What is this? We got Mark says only refueled as an AF H-53 pilot. Men light nighttime air refueling with sporty NVGs made it easier. Training students was really a trip. Drug slayers got a reputation quickly. I did not refuel with NVGs.
No, I didn't
We
either.
put them in the case. It was all lights on. And you hoped you had a good tanker that the lights worked. Sometimes they didn't. And that made it a little bit more challenging. Dan says, thanks, guys. Really informative. Much appreciated. Thanks for the voice message. And I'm sorry for the voice message that was 53 seconds of silence. I don't know what's going on with that. Laura says, Luna knows her self-worth. She demands the best, and she gets it. She's down here. Have we established now that
we're gonna have
Mace was
Mace
a
back
fluke?
on. We're gonna have Mace back on, or another female type.
We've got a lot of data now. We need more. We've got a lot of Luna data. We need more Mace data.
That's true. Valid.
Like this is a thing now. I'm confused. David says, help your bro and don't be a douche. Applies to mental health too.
100%.
Yeah, always rule number one. Yeah. All right, dude. So that's the end of the show. What else you got?
No, just ask everybody to keep the comments coming like we just did. The mental health minute came from you guys. So Mover and I do our best to dig up stuff that we think would just be fun to talk about, but sometimes it comes straight from you guys. And then be kind. Next time we're gonna try a little bit different, slightly different format. So
dude, well, we did this in December. We've done this once before where we had me in a hotel, Wombat, and you next. Yeah, but it's because it's all gonna be one channel. Our plan is to talk about less stuff, but just have more time to just gab. That's true. We are not in the frenzy anymore.
Yeah, do more of the Ready Room Squadron bar style of banter, basically, because really that's for me. I don't hang out with other adults unless I'm on this in front of this computer with Mover once a week with him and Doug. So
dude, that's a stretch. Calling me an adult to hang out with is stretch it. And I know my work.
The two of us.
Well,
one whole adult between two of them.
It's the banter. Honestly, the whole fighter pilot life. One of the things I miss most is just sitting around the ready room shooting the breeze, and this is as close as it gets for me. So that's what Mover and I are trying to bring a little more of that back. And with so many topics like we've been doing, sometimes we feel rushed, and the show goes a little long. But you guys, we'll try it. We're open to the feedback.
At 2.5 hours, Gonky. Yeah, I think.
Trying to keep it right. Trying to keep it right at 2 hours and make it a little more banter. Maybe take answer some more, get some more questions from the people listening. So yeah, sorry about that. That's not an F-14A Tomcat, by the way. Good catch, Mover.
Speaking of banter. Ooh,
right. So we've hired help to help us. We're trying to make the show better, right? Trying to make
he's a good guy. He's trying, and it's a learning process. And so we talked about whether to put overlays, is what we call them. Stuff that helps, like visual aids as we're talking. And I have said, look, it's better to have nothing than the wrong thing. However, in some of them, he's done really good. And like, I'm sure in the mental health minute, he's going to have that Ron Swanson quote. Like he's going to have the actual clip because he does such a good job with it.
Yeah, he's good.
In this case, it was our fault because we did not QC it before uploading it. And
by me.
Yeah. But I am not without sin because I don't ever watch him either. It just so happened that you're the one that got it this time. He got me one of like a few episodes back, and somebody in the comments caught it and I fixed it. But yeah, we are sorry about that. Luna will make sure that we do better next time.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for the next mistake I make similar to that. So just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, we're sorry in advance for all transgressions heretofore. All right, Douglas, you got anything else for the kids at home?
That is it for me for tonight.
All right, kids at home, everybody. Got anything else for us? Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's been fun, and I will see you from the hotel.
We'll see you next week, I guess.
Yeah. See you later. Bye.